thinking about society, thinking about the earth, thinking about the future. We know that's important. But there's something else we need to think about first. And that's you. Toyota delivers to you. To excite you. To support you. To set you free. To you, Toyota.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. What an absolute pleasure it is to be here again. I have to tell you, this is one of my highlights on the calendar. It really is. It's just one to kickstart the year on what I like to believe a very high note. So it is so good to be with you here in a very beautiful venue in Joburg. It really is a venue that has water and lights. We are so easy to please these days. We really are. But so this, of course, is a massive event on the calendar because we take stock of not only Toyota South Africa, we look at the motor industry in general, and this has to be one of the most exciting industries to be looking at right now. I mean, I've been sitting on my chair right now, and you need to listen to our two speakers that are going to be coming up, from an economist to a technical professor, talking about what's happening in the world and cars and China and Trump and this and that and the next. And I'm like trying to eavesdrop and keep pace of all of it. But the reality is, this is the world we're living in. It is fast, it is changing, and it is happening now. And that's what we're here to discuss. So it really is going to be a fantastic, fantastic morning together. So let me just get a couple of the house rules out of the way, because I know that for those of us that need the bathrooms, it's just, there's some downstairs here, and then there are also some upstairs as you enter the venue where you were. There's some bathrooms over there. Also, please put your phones on silent. You don't have to switch them off. Just keep them on silent so we don't interrupt the speakers here today. And of course, the Wi-Fi. You'll see it on your disc over there with your name on. You'll see that you'll get the code for the Wi-Fi. I think it's the Galleria that you log on to, and the password is the-Galleria. I'm not sure, but you've got it on your name tag. So please feel free to have a look at that. So let me find the camera, because I know that this is being broadcast live on YouTube today. So to all of those that have tuned in and you're watching it, it's so good to have you with us wherever you are, and you are honestly going to enjoy every minute of this. We were rehearsing yesterday, we were going through some of the content, and most importantly, the things under those black drapes. Holy moly, they're awesome. But you'll hear about that a little bit later on. So thank you to you for tuning in wherever you are. And this will be available. So this is going to be on YouTube, so you'll be able to watch it if there's anything that you did miss, or you'd like to listen to the speakers again, or something you'd like to relive. It will be on YouTube, so you'll feel free to go in there. Also, the hashtag SOMI 2026, and hashtag Toyota South Africa, Toyota SA rather, just Toyota SA. If you are on the socials, whether it be LinkedIn or anything else, please make sure that you do hashtag us, and we look forward to following the conversation. Okay, so today so much is going through my mind. We're sitting and doing State of the Nation address this evening, 7 o'clock, our president, if anybody watches it anymore, I don't know. For me, it's a press release, and this is the industry I work in, because, yeah, it's just unfulfilled promises, unfortunately. But this is the reality of where we are living right now. So let's keep that in a shell, and then let's look at the motor industry. Let's look where we're at the moment. And so I was doing a little bit of research, and this is an incredibly interesting time to be alive. It really is, and we're going to see that more and more and more as we're talking. But for South Africa, vehicle exports are still doing phenomenally well. I think, and I will be corrected if I'm wrong, I know over 400,000 for one of the first times in our country. We can never belittle that number, because that number sustains us, and it's great, and it's wonderful, and it needs to be celebrated. It's a massive thing. It's the first time in our history. Yet at the same time, imports that we see driving on our roads are reshaping our showroom floors. Chinese brands are redrawing price dynamics. Global markets are counting down to these electrification deadlines we're going to hear about in a moment from Andrew. But what really gets me, and I was sitting and looking at this morning, is that we are a country that mines everything that is needed. We have the minerals that basically is there to drive the future. Yet we're still debating how quickly we can actually manufacture that future ourselves, which sometimes doesn't make sense to us. And that's why we are hoping for fast leadership and fast direction. And perhaps maybe we'll get something tonight when we hear from the president. We're an industry basically that's built on internal combustion excellence, while export markets look towards 2035 and beyond. Are we ready for that? And these are some of the questions that the motor industry needs to look at. In the middle of all of this, and this is what we cannot downplay, Toyota still remains the market leader. They're doing something right. 1 in 4 new vehicles sold in South Africa have that badge. And that's something that I think is well worth giving Toyota a big round of applause for. The theme today is very, very interesting because we're talking about disruption. So there's a tension between strength and disruption, heritage and reinvention. And this is exactly why the theme is so fitting, driving through disruption. Because disruption isn't optional at a time like this. Whether we like it or not, disruption is essential. It is here. But the question is not whether we face it, how do we navigate through it? How do we take the car and drive through this disruption? So we started off with an incredibly powerful video, and I think perhaps the answer lies in that video. And at the heart of all of the numbers that we've been talking about here, we can talk about policy shifts, we can talk about production forecasts, we can talk about electrification and all of those things. But at the heart of it, there's something deeply human. And I think that video captured the human essence of everything we are doing here. Mobility is not a one-size-fits-all thing. Every customer is unique. Every customer has a different need. Every business need is different. Every family, every fleet operator, every entrepreneur requires something very tailored towards them. Toyota's commitment to creating mobility solutions, as we saw it there, for you, reminds us that even in disruption, the center of gravity remains human. And that's what's important here. The customer is what is important, and I'm so glad that Toyota keeps that at the center of everything. Technology may evolve, regulation may tighten, markets may fluctuate, but if you understand your customer, you mean you truly understand your customer, you can drive through anything. Now, I'm a one-man kind of girl, meaning I've been married for a very long time, and so I keep my eye focused on my husband. I do the same with cars. Toyota, however, are stuffing that up for me. You can laugh, but it's the truth. I get emails saying, would you like to drive our brand new Lexus? And I get into this brand new Lexus, and I start questioning. I question what I'm doing in life. Why am I not driving a Lexus? Why am I committed to another car when this is actually a better looking car? And then they do something even worse. They unveil something called a Prado Land Cruiser, the brand new sexy looking beast that you're also going to be seeing a bit later. So they are questioning and they are speaking to the heart of the customer. So they're doing something right, guys. I have needs and they are fulfilling them, and that's the damn problem, is that I may actually dump the need I have and look towards another need in the form of these beautiful Toyota branded cars. It's absolutely amazing. So today we really are going to question a lot of what we do. Quick program, looking at that program today. So we've broken it into two. We have an industry overview. So we've got from the macroeconomic environment to Andrew, who's going to come up in just a couple of minutes' time. Professor Justin Barnes and Gulam are going to be coming up and chatting, giving us some presentations as well. We're then going to have a Q&A section with all of them where we focus in on that industry overview. We will open it up to the audience to ask questions as well. And then the part I know that all of you look forward to, because I'm looking forward to as well. Leon Turon is going to come up onto stage with the one and only Donovan Goliath, who's with us today, looking very gorgeous with his beard over there. He's just such a good guy, and he's awesome to watch because his excitement is going to resonate with all of you as we unveil these new shapes and vehicles that are exclusive to you to see today. So it's going to be amazing. And then after that, we'll have another Q&A, and that's where you can ask about the new offerings and the marketing. Okay, so after my long spiel, it is time to call up the man of the moment, the man that has driven this company through so much over the last 10 years. And what 10 years it's been. We didn't think that we'd get COVID. We didn't think that we were going to be driven by all of these new minerals and new cars and new EVs and all of these kind of words that we are learning and becoming a daily part of our lives that we need to fast track. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my absolute pleasure to officially kick off SOMI 2026. Please welcome the President and CEO of Toyota South Africa Motors, Mr. Andrew Kirby. Take a look at the screen as well.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our State of the Motor Industry for 2026. This is now the 9th edition, and really pleased to see everyone, and thank you for joining us. Leanne, thank you very much for joining us again. Really good to work with you, and appreciate your introductory comments. I'm not sure if I need to offer you a job or not, but I think you phrased it very, very well. I'm very pleased that we have a lot of our partners and key stakeholders in the industry with us as well. Representation from NAMSA, NARCAM, AITF. We have our non-executive director with us as well, and member of the media. Thank you. I'm not sure how we end up having this on the same day as SONA 2 years in a row, but I'm glad you're here and not in Cape Town. But I hope you enjoy this morning's discussions. I think, of course, everyone talks about disruptions. We do know that we live in a fairly uncertain time, both globally and in South Africa. And the question is, how do we respond to that? And of course, our theme today is driving through disruption. It is more difficult to plan and forecast. It is more difficult to anticipate what 2026 is going to bring, but obviously the next 5 to 10 years, which is crucial for us in our planning horizons. But what that does mean as an industry is that we need to be a lot more resilient. We need to have ways in which we adapt very quickly and respond to these changing trends. And that's certainly an approach that, as Toyota, we've been taking. Building resilience, responding very quickly, becoming a lot more dynamic, and I'm looking forward to being able to share some of that with you today. I need to say up front, Leon and I are looking forward to sharing a lot of news with you today, and we've got a lot of exciting material. This is a very important year for Toyota South Africa Motors. But we're only going to share about half of the news for the year. We'll leave a lot more for later in the year. So I'm just setting that up front. We wouldn't be in this position, and we're very grateful for our customers, for the loyalty that we've seen, and from our really important partners to be able to stand here today and share this with you. We've got with us also some of our key dealers, some of our key component suppliers who are really instrumental in getting us to this point. And we're all walking this journey together. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for your support. This is part of our strength as an organization, is our supply network and our dealer network. And we know that they are crucial to being able to offer our customers the value that we seek to deliver. And as Leanne said, the trick for us, even though we are a volume manufacturer, we do have 3 very strong brands, is to be treating each customer in their own unique way, delivering what they need in their unique way, their vehicles, the way they use them, and we keep our focus on that. So let's talk a little bit about driving through disruption. Of course, as you also saw through the video, lots of change, lots of trends, and lots of questions about how we navigate our way through this. But I think we need to do this in a way that makes us stronger. And one of our values as TSAM is to welcome competition, find smart ways of doing things, be inquisitive, and continuously strive to get better than before. So this quote is a good one to inspire us. It's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It's the one that's the most adaptable to change. And we certainly know that that's the environment we're in at the moment. So let's talk a little bit about 2025 just for a second. Of course, we all know about the global disruptions. We know about the geopolitical trends. Of course, the US policy has had an impact on the South African auto sector. We've showed a lot of resilience through this, but we've been fairly disciplined in how we've responded. And of course, customers are responding well as well. On the other hand, and you're going to hear a lot more in detail later, but we've been very fortunate. The South African market, especially the JSE, has performed extremely well. We've seen some strengthening of the rand. We've had the benefit of lower interest rates that started to build consumer and business confidence, and we're very fortunate to be in that position. On the other hand, and I'm going to explain later, we've seen a big growth in new vehicle sales. But it's not all that it seems. We're seeing a lot of pricing impact on that volume, and we need to be very mindful of that as we go into 2026. So let's talk about where we are in our market in South Africa. So there are a few perspectives. Yes, we can be very pleased that we've seen a 15.7% growth compared to last year. Yes, this is the first time that we are seeing volumes higher than the pre-COVID years, higher than 2019. So this is a big step change for us. But the reason I'm showing you the volume over this period of time is that we get some perspective on where we are. Volume's not as high as 2006 and 7, certainly not where they were from 2012 to 2016. So it's a fairly pedestrian market. 600,000, yes, is a nice improvement, but it's small. We really lack scale in South Africa. And if we consider our population size, if we consider the mobility needs, if we consider the quality of our public transport, we should be a lot bigger than this. So we are moving in the right direction, but we do need to think very carefully about how we can move this into another level of scale that can support our industry overall. Of course, what I've put on the graph here is also our CKD mix. So this is the mix of vehicles manufactured in South Africa, sold in our market. And when you go back to 2006, you can see that we're around 56%. That slowly dropped to the mid 45, 46% for a period of time. And now we've seen after COVID a significant decline. And if you look at the gradient of that decline, we can expect that to be a lot more severe in 2026. So 33%, only 33% of all our vehicles sold in South Africa were locally manufactured. Of course, imports are extremely important. Imports create a vibrant market. They bring in a lot of different styles of vehicles that our customers need. We can't expect to produce everything in South Africa. And for our size market and where we are on the continent, that would be an unrealistic expectation. So the strength of imports in South Africa is extremely important. Even as manufacturers, we import a whole range of vehicles. And and we're going to be revealing some of those to you today. So it's very, very important. They bring new technology, they create a lot of vibrancy in the market, but do we have the right balance? And that's a discussion that I'm going to be talking about as we go through the presentation. 33% is not really enough, and there has been a thought that the manufacturing base in South Africa can be sustained by exports. But I'm going to show you a little bit later that that's not a good way of looking at things. So let's talk a little bit about this 15.7% growth in vehicle sales. If we had a net increase of 15.7%, where the average prices remained the same, we'd need to be around a 3.5% GDP growth. We had achieved a 1.2%. So where did this come from? It's a very busy table, but the message is fairly simple. The green elements show where there was a growth, and the red is obviously a decline. Essentially what happened last year is the A segment, being the entry-level market, grew faster than the other segments, but within each segment, B, sub B, C, and D, which is the volume in South Africa in the passenger car market, it was the entry-level models that grew faster than all the others. And so what that did is it created an artificial growth in volume. If we look at the true value, we didn't grow by 15.7% at all. Yes, there was a little bit of catch-up and restructuring after 2023, 2024, but I think we need to just see that in perspective, and it reflects just how constrained consumer spending is. There's some definitely green shoots, and we'll talk about that later, and I know that Gulam's going to share some of that with us, but we just need to see that 15.7% in perspective. Of course, I will talk about my forecast a little bit later. So let's now talk about production. So, similar, right? 600,000. Sales 600,000, production 600,000. But you can be lost if you don't look at the details. Yes, it is good. We got to 609,000, an improvement on last year of 594. Yes, fantastic. Largest ever volume of exports, 411,000. This is definitely something to celebrate. It makes a huge contribution to our economy, especially in terms of forex, but creating jobs, creating skills are very, very important to us. We're now at a point, though, where 68% of all the vehicles manufactured in South Africa are exported, and only 198,000 are sold in South Africa. So where does this leave us? Well, what it's meant is that we had a fairly diversified export market going back to 2006, and slowly we've migrated to being focused on one market. The UK might not like me to say one market, so UK and the Europe as one export destination. 81% of all vehicles exported were exported to the UK and the EU. And what's very surprising, Africa. We used to export 19% of our vehicles into Africa. Now we're 8%. Yes, we've seen a little bit of growth from 2020. The Africa market is really a tough market. We have a constrained Africa market because of used imports. We also have grey new vehicle imports that come through the Middle East that make this market a very, very tough environment. It's largely driven by government fleet purchases with very low levels of private consumers. So we do need to work harder to strengthen our business in Africa, but it is now only 8% of all our export volumes. Of course, as Toyota, we're by far the strongest player in exporting into the rest of Africa. So the point I want to make is that we need a healthy domestic market. We need a diversified export market in order for us to sustain and grow our production base in South Africa. We cannot simply say, that's fine. We won't sell anything in South Africa. We'll just import, and we'll export everything to Europe. Why? Because that 411,000 exports is going to change. Why? Because of regulation changes in the UK and in Europe. The UK has a zero-emission vehicle mandate where you have to sell a certain number or ratio of zero-emission vehicles every year, and that becomes more and more stringent. In Europe, they have an average emission ratio, and if you don't achieve that, you get penalized. What we do know is there's been a number of discussions about whether this time frame or direction is in fact appropriate. And so last year there were already changes to the regulations in the UK, where they now suddenly extended hybrid sales to 2035. And just recently in Europe, they've changed the regulations to say, okay, you can sell 10% that are not zero emissions. You have some latitude. And you need to be able to offset that with e-fuels or biofuels or low-carbon steel. So that there's a recognition that the adoption, the business case for battery electrics especially, is not so strong, and the value proposition for customers is not so strong, so we're going to need a lot more time. And it's very difficult to predict exactly what those step changes are going to be in technology to when the price point and the value proposition becomes a realistic outcome for Europe, or they end up putting themselves in a very difficult position. So this means that as South Africa, if we're relying on this environment with these changes, it's going to be very difficult to sustain our volumes. We are most likely, over the next 5 years, going to see significant decline in exports to Europe and the UK. We don't have competitive new energy vehicles. Yes, we have some, but we don't sell any locally, and we haven't localized those components. For us to be competitive with any vehicle, we need to have the scale to localize those components so that we can be competitive. And now what we're doing is we're exporting some new energy vehicles to Europe, but we haven't localized those components. So I think the picture is very clear. We can't rely, the situation is not going to remain the same, and we need to think very carefully about how we're going to adjust our approach. Most big markets around the world have all put specific interventions into place, supporting customers, supporting the business, creating penalties, creating incentives to accelerate the transition to new energy vehicles. There are very few, if any, markets that have naturally progressed into new energy vehicles simply because the value proposition is not there yet. Yes, it might come in the future. And we feel very strongly that as Toyota, our multi-pathway approach is the correct one, where we are technology agnostic. There will be step changes in hybrids. There'll be value propositions for hybrids, plug-in hybrids, battery electrics, fuel cell, carbon neutral, hydrogen ICE. All of these are going to be very important and will be used in different ways for different vehicles and different customer usage conditions. And we all know how varied that is in South Africa, and of course how varied it is in Africa. But look at some of those targets. They are really severe. So we can't be left behind as a country and say, well, we can't afford to transition. Because if we say we can't afford to transition, we are saying effectively we'll also give up on exports and we'll become I don't like this term, but a rear-guard manufacturer of old conventional technology. And that's not the way we've been working over the last 100 years in South Africa. So why the transition? Let's just talk a little bit and put this in some perspective. There's a lot of controversy, a lot of forecasts. We've just pulled up a Bloomberg forecast that says by 2028, a large portion of new energy vehicle sales will be battery electric, followed by hybrid, followed by plug-in hybrid. We, of course, don't believe this is correct at all. Being the number one manufacturer globally, already 44% of all our sales are hybrids. And we're seeing a lot of competitor brands pivot towards hybrid simply because, first of all, it's the fastest way to reduce CO2 emissions. Secondly, the value proposition is a lot stronger. And customers understand that. They can't be hoodwinked. They understand the benefit and differences between a hybrid, plug-in hybrid, and battery electric. We do expect dramatic acceleration of plug-in hybrid and battery electrics, but we do know that in South Africa, a large portion, the largest portion of new energy vehicles by 2030 will be hybrids, followed by battery, followed by plug-in hybrids. So we need to adapt to this environment very, very quickly, both from a sales and a manufacturing point of view, because as I said, we're going to be left behind. Let's just look a little bit at the number of vehicles that have been introduced in South Africa. You can see that in 2025, over just under 70 new models were introduced. More battery electrics, slightly less plug-in hybrids and slightly less hybrids. And you can see in the premium segment what that looked like as well. Very few coming into the light commercial and medium commercial segment. Only 4% of all the new energy vehicle models sold in South Africa are manufactured in South Africa. And this is where we have a big gap. So there's a strong movement to introducing new energy vehicles. That's very good for us. That creates a very exciting market for us. But we're not seeing the transition to locally produce those vehicles as well. And as I mentioned before, find the right balance. So let's talk a little bit about drivetrains in South Africa. If we look at our total volume sold last year, that's the number of new energy vehicles sold, 2.8%. Obviously, mostly hybrids, followed by plug-in and then battery electric vehicles. As Toyota South Africa, we are definitely leading the way. 58% of all new energy vehicles sold in South Africa are either Toyota or Lexus. So we are very, very intentional about driving our direction, and we will be making some significant announcements today about our progress towards new energy vehicles, and dare I say, later in the year as well. So we've got a lot to look forward to. The big volume seller obviously being Corolla Cross Hybrid, followed by RAV4 Hybrid, Corolla Hybrid, and Lexus NX is the top four models. So we're very, very active, and we'll be expanding our model range intentionally over 2026 and, of course, the years to come as well. So we do need to sit back and think a little bit about manufacturing value addition, because that's what brings the economic value to a country. And when we look at South Africa and we compare ourselves over the last 24 years, we were doing very well around year 2000, where we had an average manufacturing value addition per capita of $720. Right? $720 per person. That's unfortunately dropped. So zero growth all the way down to $640. And we were doing really well amongst our peers. But because we haven't had a coherent, well-managed industrial policy, we've slipped behind. And look what happened to Turkey, I guess is the way you should pronounce that, with their intentional industrial policy where they are now and how their world has changed. So we are prematurely deindustrializing as a country. And the question is, are we now starting to see the early signs of that potentially happening with the auto sector as well? And the auto sector is a very important catalyst for industrialization. It's a really good sector to help drive and spur the rest of industrialization in the country. So it's important that we keep this in mind. We do have challenges, and we need to be honest and frank about them. Over the last few years, we've seen a lot of input costs for manufacturing increase. This is not just particular to the auto sector, but for many of the industrial sectors. And we need to be fairly aware, not complain, but this is the facts. Energy costs have gone up. We've made big progress with load shedding, but what we have seen is significant increases in energy costs. Labor costs have gone up. They're going up higher than inflation every year. So our cost of labor, we used to have a significant competitive advantage to some of the other, especially Asian markets. That's dissipated. Water security. In our plant in Toyota, we've had to build a dam just to ensure that we have water security and don't lose any production efficiencies or continuity. And that is a serious concern for us. And of course, logistics is a big issue, particularly on the rail side. We've seen very good improvement from port operations, but it's going to take a little bit of time before we see rail costs start to come down and those efficiencies help. We transport a lot of goods, high-value goods, both parts, components, service parts, vehicles inside the country, in Africa, and exporting. So logistics becomes a really key competitive element for us. And of course, we've also seen the erosion of our supply base. I think you all know what's happening with steel, with the tire industries, and we need to find a way of bringing that back to strengthen our competitive and manufacturing capabilities. So what's going to strengthen our automotive competitiveness? I think we can crystallize our situation down to three areas. The first one is, how do we strengthen our competitiveness of CKD manufacturing in South Africa? Our automotive development policies over decades has been certain, foresighted, and well thought through. But our world's changed. And we now need to adapt to look at what we can do to strengthen our CKD competitiveness. And I'm not saying that they need to have a majority mix in the market, not at all, but we need to move back to probably that 40 to 50% range of vehicles sold in South Africa should be manufactured locally. We need to have a dynamic import portion of the market, but we also need to have the right balance so that we can create the jobs, the skills, the forex, and not end up just being an import replacement market. Quite frankly, the country can't afford it. We might argue that imports could be potentially more affordable, but the country can't afford it because the forex impact is enormous, and we often forget about that. So how do we take a thoughtful approach to improving the competitiveness of local manufacturing in a fiscally neutral way? We're not suggesting a big, blunt instrument to suddenly correct this. What we're suggesting is tweaking and small changes on a variety of different elements that can improve our competitiveness and create that solid base. Because we need a solid base in South Africa, as I said, also Africa, because we know we're going to have to really fight to sustain any form of decent volumes into Europe and the UK. The second one is we need to, and I hope I've convinced you through the presentation, transition to new energy vehicles quickly. We need specific government support and interventions to support the investments in low-scale new energy vehicle production, because we do have low scale at the moment, and we need to support the customer transition, because the value proposition is not there on its own. The premiums are too high, and so we need both of those to be in place. And how do we do that in a smart way, where we're not just asking for incentives, but in fact, we have a smart way of doing this so that, as a whole, our fiscus can actually benefit. And the third one is we need to be very careful about our export markets. It's critical. We don't have the scale in South Africa. If we didn't have a manufacturing base in South Africa at all in 2026, and we said, let's establish one, it would never happen. We're very fortunate, we're very privileged that over the last 100 years, we've built a very deep level of manufacturing, from the component suppliers, tier 1, 2, 3, all the integrated services, and the OEMs, to get to where we are at the moment. We export to first world markets around the world with high levels of expectations and demand, and we achieve them all. So we have a unique opportunity in the auto sector. It's really something we can celebrate as South Africans. But we can see what's going to be happening, that we are going to be at risk if we continue just to rely on one market and say, well, that's fine. I think we need some interventions, we need some decisive leadership across the industry with all the stakeholders, labor included, and government, to make these changes now. We deal with a 3 to 4 year time span when making investments, and we're already a little bit late. If we can conclude this during 2026, we'll be impacting on 29, 30 investments, and we know that our world is going to be very different. 4 years ago, our world was different to today. And so the speed and the importance of responding now is absolutely crucial. How do we leverage the African Continental Free Trade Area? We also know that, as I mentioned, we are going to still have to deal with used imports. We're still going to have to deal with grey, new imports. But the opportunity does exist for us to be much stronger on the continent. And that's certainly Toyo South Africa's direction. And then lastly, we need to deal with the structural issues. We can't ignore those. But I'm very pleased to see, and we'll perhaps talk about that later, a lot of the reforms that are starting to embed a change in this area. So I think we should also not just be defensive and say, well, let's protect or sustain. No, let's grow. We need to create jobs. We need to create economic activity. I'm fairly confident that the South African market should and could exceed 700,000 vehicle sales. I'm very confident that the South African production could and should exceed 720,000 production. If we made the right small changes in the right way, creating the right investor confidence, we have the potential to increase vehicles sold to the domestic market by 20%, vehicles exported by 20%, and that would generate 21 billion rand in manufacturing value addition to the South African economy. It's significant. And of course, we generate 14,500 direct jobs. Justin's more equipped to be able to tell you what that multiplier is, but depending on how you look at it, between 4 and 12 throughout the whole value chain. So this could make a material impact to jobs. And so we need not just think about, well, how do we stop becoming an import replacement market? No, we need to be thinking about how do we structure things differently so that we can thrive, grow, and contribute to the South African economy, contribute to creating jobs, contribute to creating skills, and contribute to creating a vibrant auto sector and industrial base. So I think there's a lot we can do. I'm really looking forward to continuing the discussions. I am encouraged. We have a heightened level of engagements at the moment with government. As a sector, between NARCAM, NUMSA, NAMSA, we have a very close level of discussion, very open, frank discussions. So I think that is a unique privilege and blessing that we have as an industry, but we do need to act now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I think really hitting the nail on the head of where we're at. So yes, protect what we have, but grow. That's the essence of business. I mean, you have to grow, you have to move. We've seen companies that haven't grown and haven't moved with the times, and you've seen what happens to them. So this is it's an exciting path, it really is. And I say that because I was one of them, and I remember literally a year ago standing on the stage and talking about that whole range anxiety thing, and no, I was so negative about hybrids and electric vehicles and all of this kind of thing, and saying South Africa's not ready for this and we can't do this and Anyway, like I said to you, I get very spoiled by Toyota. You know, I then get to drive one of their electric vehicles, which happened to be that Lexus of theirs, which is just, it blew my mind. And everything that I had thought completely changed. I've never felt so good in a vehicle before. It was amazing. And then, you know, when you go into countries where electric vehicles are the way, you actually see the difference it's making. You feel the difference that you're making. You hear the difference you're making. You can sneak up on people. It's beautiful. You know what we are like, you know, South Africans, that's the way we are. We like to sneak up and take people by surprise. But, you know, jokes aside, we have to change our behaviors. We're living in a time where we have no option. We really don't. I mean, I look at my generation, and we never asked for all of this change. I sure as hell didn't. I didn't ask to compete with ChatGPT for everything, to compete with AI, to do all of these changes. But you know what? We have no option. And when you embrace it and you move with it, it is incredible what you can achieve when you work alongside something and you don't actually just push it to the side. So thank you, Andrew. I mean, I think this is a great way to start off. And we'll delve a lot more into that and more when we sit down and have our panel discussion. But to set us up for much more when we talk about the macroeconomic environment and to understand the world, because yes, we are this little tip on the bottom of the African continent, but what about the rest of the world? There's a very big world out there that has got a lot of noise at the moment, and we need someone to explain it to us. Well, we've got the man to do that exactly for us. He is the senior economist at Standard Bank and also head of research there. So it is my absolute pleasure to welcome up on stage Gulumbalem from Standard Bank Group. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's great to visit with you. Andrew, thanks. Now I'm empowered. I've been given 20 minutes to describe the world that we're living in. It's a 40-minute narrative, so I'm going to attempt to hem it into that 20 minutes. But preempting that, I'd like to just share a little bit of a personal story. I have a 23-year-old who completed his university stint last year. He joined the world of work on the 5th of January. It was a milestone. It was a milestone because he got off my payroll. And then on the 3rd of February, armed with his first salary check, which would about make a deposit He walked into a Toyota dealership and bolting that onto a lease program, he walked out with a Toyota Starlet Cross. But he wasn't done, because a couple of days later, he said to me, and again, armed with youthful ambition, he introduced me to a model called an FJ, an upcoming FJ. And he said to me, he needs to get onto that list. So if you know a guy, and if you really know a guy, I suspect the silhouette of that second car resembles that, but it's just a guess. So now I'm down to about 17 minutes to deliver a 40-minute presentation. I'm going to attempt to be rapid in this because it's quite a sizable endeavor. There can be no doubt that we've entered a new terrain in terms of not just cyclical considerations, but the era that is befalling us. Some may be inclined to think that this is a period of deep disorder, and instead we would argue it is a period of contested order. We're lucky in the sense that we have the last year of experience to guide us with regard to where we think the world is going in due course. And we also have the benefit of a very transparent signal from Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, who in Davos highlighted to us that this is not simply a transition. Andrew used the word several times, and he spoke about a rupture in global affairs, a tectonic shift. Mark also highlighted, and he said the quiet part aloud. He signaled that, in fact, the rules, the multilateralism, and the institutions of yesteryear have, in fact, begun to erode and erode rapidly. But his concession as well, that it was not necessarily a system that was fair, that was symmetric. In fact, he conceded that the system that has been prevailing for decades has been to the advantage of select, more powerful economies. Economies that enjoyed hegemony, that provided the world with safety and security, and to a large degree dictated the rules that prevailed and rules that were adversarial to emerging markets. And so we're entering a world that is going to be bifurcated, that is going to be in spheres. But it is not a world that is signaling de-globalization. If anything, there is a reconfiguration of supply chains, a reconfiguration of global alliances, reshoring, friendshoring, nearshoring. They're all very different things. But this is now part of our lexicon in terms of the manner in which nations around the world are going to engage in establishing relationships where there is commercial trust, where there is the capacity for predictability. We're nowhere near a world of perfection in terms of understanding what is coming down the pike, but in establishing relationships across borders where there is heightened levels of predictability is going to be significant currency in the future. Another dimension that we have to consider is that supply chains around the world are prioritizing resilience over efficiency. Continuity, going concern, reliability over low-cost production. For the last 30 years, globalization was fashioned around efficiency, and global supply chains oriented themselves around that capacity for just-in-time production at the lowest cost. Now, as I'm alluding to, resilience is going to be perhaps at the forefront of the manner in which supply chains fashion themselves. With resilience can come redundancy. In other words, extra inventory, the capacity to ensure there is continuity in production that just adds a little bit of cost to the production chain. And with that, that probably suggests we're entering a new realm where global inflation, global cost floors may be a little bit higher than otherwise would be the case, and certainly was the pursuit over the last 30 years. But to talk a little about geopolitics and the manner in which it is going to manifest, and I think this is important not just for the automotive industry, but for life as we conceive of it and for the next generation. Multilateralism, the rules and the institutions are now being replaced by power, coercion, and the weaponization of tools that certain nation has in its orbit and in its toolkits. So whether it is the weaponization of trade and trade relations, or the weaponization of strength of American aggregate demand and a market that many would want to sell into, this weaponization has now come briskly to the fore. And even though it may seem there's a relative calm in the global geopolitical environment now relative to last year, I suspect it's not necessarily going to ease and become benign. America has numerous attributes that define its exceptionalism. It is exceptional because it accounts for about 1/4 of global GDP. That's enormous heft. It is exceptional because the dollar is still significant in terms of denominating trade. America's institutional foundations are strong, and its technological prowess is significant. Also, its weight in global financial markets is astronomical, deep, and it's liquid. But America for decades has also found prowess from its military complex. America spends on its military more than 3 times that of China, and it spends more than the next 9 nations combined. This is not just deterrence. Over the last 8 decades, since the Second World War, America has shown a proclivity for military intervention. In almost every single decade, without exception, America is engaged in some level of activity somewhere around the world. I'm not subtly trying to suggest that America is warmongering, but I am suggesting that America has an activism with regard to military engagement. And the way we think about prospective geopolitical terrain, geopolitics is now at the core of business decision making. Military spend is being amplified in Europe, and it is taking away from spend, infrastructure spend, that would otherwise have gone to what economists metaphorically call butter. Guns is spending on military, and spending on butter would be spending on that infrastructure like roads and bridges and telecommunication systems. Otherwise, infrastructure that has far more multiplier effect than spending on military. And of course, capital is now flowing, private capital, to supporting this industrial complex endeavor. But military activity introduces hazard into global economic decision making. And for the sake of brevity, let me just say to you that peacetime economics tends to engender higher global GDP growth than when there is frictions in the global economy. It's undeniable. But for all of America's strengths, and I'm not suggesting that American exceptionalism is going to come to an end. It isn't. American exceptionalism will continue. But America is now in contention. There are other individuals or countries or nations that are also adding to global prowess. There are new kids on the block that are challenging the United States. Asian manufacturing, and China in particular, is deeply contesting, and it has been for years in the goods market. In a single exhibit, this underscores China's prowess, and China's prowess for years to come. It is this particular exhibit that unnerves the United States. It is this exhibit that perhaps is signaling that the United States as an empire is going to be overtaken by China. It sounds incredibly dramatic. But what the United States lacks, and many other Western nations, is what China is dominant in. China harbors access to the upstream ecosystem of ingredients, of commodities, that is going to determine the new era, new technology, goods, and maybe even commensurate services. If we cast our minds back to the 1700s and the 1800s, to the Industrial Revolution, the nations that were at the forefront of that era's technologies, whether it was the telegraph or the spinning jenny, the nations that were frontier with respect to those technologies, be it the United Kingdom, the United States, or even Russia, they dominated for a length of time, even centuries. Nations that lagged, that did not know what was happening, in fact, continued till this day to suffer that dent. So China is at the forefront of the ingredients of a new era of technological goods innovation. And the nations that are able to get access to rare earth metals, permanent magnets, lithium, copper, and aluminium will be at the forefront of this endeavor. So the geopolitics surrounding America's incursion into Venezuela, its aspirations with respect to Greenland, its strong armed diplomacy with some African countries like the DRC that are well imbued with modern day resources, or even China's poison pill clauses in contracts with Asian nations like Malaysia that speak to America wanting to get access to this one area where it is weak, and this area that is going to be significantly determinant of this century's dynamos. Asia has another form of insulation. It has turned inward. In other words, the share of international trade that Asia does has shifted. In other words, only 46% of trade in 1990 was intra-Asian. It has risen more recently to 60%, and by the end of this decade, we anticipate it will reach roughly 70%. In other words, Asia is trading more with itself and more in an environment of more rapid, even hypergrowth in some instances. So yes, it surely would want to export into Western Hemisphere markets, the United States and Europe. But to the extent that that exclusion is becoming more prominent, America and Sino tensions continue to be elevated. Asia is somewhat insulated because of this very significant shift in terms of domestic consumption, wider local and wider regional economic activity. Very quickly then, there are two perils that could befall the world this year that are perhaps of the more significant scale, many more, but two that I'd be worthy of mentioning. And the one is quite simply inflation. The world grew faster last year than many feared. We performed incredibly well last year. This exhibit shows you 2025 growth in terms of analyst forecasts, month by month through the year. After April's Liberation Day, there was enormous pessimism and dent to confidence that befell the world. But as the year progressed, on the back of adapting supply chains, earlier on, Andrew mentioned the word adaptation. He spoke about the manner in which we adapt to these changed circumstances. And that was significant to the extent that in the latter half of last year, global supply chains adapted to the affront by the United States. They reconfigured very significantly and very, very quickly. Firms continued to invest. They did not cease investing, but they began to invest differently. And one of the features of this new world is where financial flows, capital flows, investment decisions are now in line with this reorienting, recalibrating supply chain world. And it moved very, very quickly, generating an outcome where global growth last year was better than anticipated, as I've suggested. And that also heralds that at least for 2026, while global growth is not going to be spectacular, it is going to be steady. And that's to be cheered given the enormity of geopolitical flux and cyclical risks that continue to loom. A moment ago, I spoke, for example, about trade tensions in the manner in which they peaked last year. They've eased significantly, and financial markets soared in the latter of last year on the back of these easing dynamic surrounding trade frictions. A very significant dynamic last year that spills over into 2026 is easing monetary policy or easier interest rates. This exhibit just gives you some sense of the manner in which numerous central banks around the world pivoted towards easier interest rates, creating easier financial conditions for the globe. This, of course, did not generate an explosion in global spending, but it removed a very significant headwind that had been enveloping the global economy, particularly in 2024 and the early part of 2025. So as I've signaled, global growth is likely to be steady, if unspectacular, with many nations around the world and even Europe showing modest acceleration as Germany remedies some of its deindustrialization woes. The same for Japan. India, as an emerging market, will enjoy fairly lively growth this year, probably one of the world's best performing economies. And we even see from Brazil, for that matter, increasing economic acceleration. I did hint that there is two concerns. The one is inflation. Tariff rose very significantly last year in the United States, but that notwithstanding, inflation did not surface. There is some concern that, in fact, it is simply inflation deferred. Inflation may begin to rear its head this year, and if that happens, it'll be worrying because then global central banks that have been easing will have to retrace their steps. It is typically the case that global recessions occur primarily for two reasons: higher interest rates or shifting confidence. And we hope that inflation does not spur higher interest rates, because that would be quite impeding. With respect to shifting confidence, one of the drivers last year of fervent growth, particularly in some markets, was heavy investment in artificial intelligence. So much so that there is concern that it may be fostering a bubble that mimics the type of bubble that did burst in the early 2000s. At this stage, it would appear to be a bubble if we do not get more widespread or global diffusion and adoption of artificial intelligence, and to the extent that it enhances productivity. In the United States, only about a fifth of American firms have actually adopted artificial intelligence with productivity gains, and that is insufficient given the enormity of investment that is flowing into this market. So there has to be the returns combined and associated with widespread use to justify this extent of investment. If it retraces, it is going to materially compromise the American financial system, financial markets, with knock-on effect to the real economy. These are not the two items that are our central forecast, but there are tail risks that portend potentially for next year. Let me turn into South Africa, and I'm going to be a little bit quicker. Let me start off by saying South Africa faces its best macroeconomic backdrop in about a decade. It is not necessarily going to be a glistening path henceforth, but there are numerous, once upon a time, headwinds that have turned into tailwinds. And when combined, these augur well for consumer spending and especially for durable goods. Last year, South Africa achieved numerous milestones with regard to, for example, an S&P upgrade, largely speaking, an improvement in Eskom's underlying generating capacity, logistics, dynamics improve, even if water woes now continue to beset, especially the urban areas, quite plentifully. But we enjoyed a credit rating upgrade. Credit ratings are effectively confidence scorecards. And for the first time in 20 years, as I'm suggesting, we enjoyed an upgrade after a lengthy period of downgrades, particularly in the last decade. And this could be heralding and signaling and confirming a turning point. Not a turning point that is guaranteed, but the beginning of shifting from stabilization of the last couple of years post-COVID to some budding momentum. The South African economy is not yet compounding, but as I'm suggesting, that flywheel is beginning to potentially garner momentum to which business can lean into. So, what usually trips South Africa is politics, and I'll make some remarks towards the end surrounding that. The cyclical forces that I'm talking about that could create a better environment and a more conducive foundation for your industry is quite simply real incomes. Real wage growth at between 2 and 3% does not appear to be expressly startling, but at 2 to 3%, it's basically the growth in nominal wages above inflation. It's to be cheered. It signals some level of income stability and strength among South African households. Another dimension is that employment gingerly is edging higher. In 2023, the number of people employed in South Africa exceeded the pre-COVID peaks. And there was a celebration to the extent that that was the year when we recovered all of the COVID losses. And as I suggested, gingerly it continues to rise. In other words, even the growth in South Africa is fairly tepid, now between 1 and 2%. It is not jobless growth. It is job-creating growth, even if it is modest. And this is important because it provides a good foundation for domestic income stability. It also lends itself more disposed to households taking on credit for purchasing consumer goods. It's unsurprising that we've seen an increase in consumer credit over and above the fall in interest rates, but the mild pickup in employment. Another dimension is that balance sheet wealth has soared mostly as a function, and as Andrew also highlighted, the increase in the stock market. Last year was an incredibly handsome year for South African stocks, even in foreign currency terms. The wealth effect through stocks and sometimes through elevated house prices impacts the economy through behavior. It doesn't foster an explosion in durable goods spending, but it encourages individuals to be less defensive, less cautious about their spending. And as I indicate, last year for South Africa, the wealth effect was significant. Admittedly, this wealth effect tends to impact high-income consumers more greatly than low-income consumers. But then high-income consumers do account for a fairly substantial share of South African GDP. I did mention interest rates and the prospect of interest rates declining further. So after last year's decline, we anticipate quite plausibly another 3/4 of a percentage point cumulatively being cut. And interest rates tend to impact an economy with a lag. So last year's interest rates will reach their zenith in terms of impact during 2026. And the cuts this year also augur well for the latter half of this year and into 2027. So none of these items that I've mentioned necessarily on their own are going to provide very amplified thrust. But what they do when combined is suggest that household fundamentals are on a sturdier footing. And it also means there's a more plethora of driving forces that are going to underpin consumer spending than reliance on any single item, be it interest rates or, for example, wealth. This signal of developing confidence is also reflected in the distribution of spending. If you look at durable goods and services, they're at the higher end of consumers' allocation. Durable goods account for almost 10% of total retail spending and services for just about half. And those are items that consumers' spending signals for respect to durable goods. They've been brought forward in terms of confidence to commit to those items. And they also at the same time would signal that maybe post-COVID there was some deferred consumption that is now coming to fruition. But the data effectively confirms the signal of budding confidence on the part of the household sector to engage and spend. One of the troubling aspects with regard to spending is this elevated allocation to gambling. And I'm not going to moralize with respect to the sanctity or otherwise of this, but it is garnering an increasing allocation of retail spending. So the exhibit on your left shows you that the share of total spending going towards gambling has doubled since 2021. And the exhibit on the right-hand side shows you the allocations from the sample that we surveyed with respect to gambling and individual spend. The lowest rung shows you that at least half of South Africans, at least with regard to the sample that we've surveyed, are spending, let's say, less than 500 Rand a month on gambling. But it's also troubling when you look at the blue segments combined. About a third of South Africans are allocating at least 2,350 Rand to spending each month. This probably signals elements of speculative activity, perhaps even household vulnerability. But I think more meaningfully, these new digital platforms with high levels of marketing and also the gamification of gambling has just made it almost frictionless to be able to participate. And of course, from an economic standpoint, gambling is more redistributive of income than a multiplier to growth. In other words, the value contribution and generating multiplier growth in terms of gambling relative to goods, services, or investment is very different. There is practically no multiplier effect from the allocations to gambling in the sense that it doesn't buttress our economy. So it's disturbing, at least through an economic transmission mechanism, that this is not meaningful, apart from the fact that it also perhaps enhances households' economic vulnerability. On a good news front, and I'm going to try to rush to conclusion, fixed investment is picking up. We're likely to see fixed investment expand this year and next year after having contracted for 2 years, and then begins to generate a favorable cycle. Admittedly, investment to GDP is around 14%. It's incredibly low. It speaks to South Africa's weak industrialization for a length of time. So the real currency is we're going to need optimism over a multi-year basis to be able to raise that blue line above 20%, nearer to 25%, to really get to the type of 3% steady state GDP growth that we aspire to. If this blue line continues to linger at these levels, we will remain locked in a 1 to 2% band, and perhaps the biggest suppressant has been the political climate, a reluctance to commit over the medium to long term, because our political climate has not always engendered the type of confidence that we need. The Rand was one of the world's best performing currencies last year, certainly up there, and it has continued to garner strength this year. But underscoring the endogenous forces that have driven the Rand stronger, this particular exhibit just shows you that the Rand did not just appreciate against the dollar. The Rand appreciated against a variety of other currencies. In other words, the Rand gained against peer commodity-based currencies, and it gained against other emerging market currencies as well over the last 3 years or so. It signals this belief in an accelerating GDP outlook. It signals increasing confidence with regard to public finance management. It's also symptomatic that there's this belief that South African assets are undervalued, whether it was stock market assets or even the bond market, which has materially improved. But at current levels, we think we had fair value. We think fair value for the Rand is between 16 Rand to the US dollar and 16 Rand and 50 cents. It can go stronger, particularly in an environment of a weaker dollar. But the advance in the currency is probably fairly mature. The rubber band has been stretched, and the stretch can go further, but not much. So the benefits that have been garnered from the strong Rand are probably already well baked into South African affairs. And that benefit has been with regard to lowering inflation. Inflation now hovering between 3 and 3.5% steady state is fairly meaningful. It effectively lowers the overall interest rate level in South Africa to a lower norm. In other words, debt affordability structurally is improved with a more lower steady state interest rate prospectively because of a lower steady state inflation rate. Of course, the Rand was helpful, but it was also contributory that the Reserve Bank lowered the inflation target from a 4.5% level to 3%, helping to lock in this belief that prospectively inflation is going to be lower on the back of a credible central bank. This is the yield curve, and it just gives you some signal as to how medium to long-term rates have fallen in South Africa. The yield curve tends to be relevant for government because it is where government borrows money in the bond market, and of course, larger sized corporates. The hurdle rate for investments has structurally declined with this plummet in yield. So this is an incredibly good news story for the government and its funding and its debt services costs, but also for corporate funding. But it's also a real economic story. If the government is going to fund at cheaper rates, it effectively means it is going to tax South Africans less than otherwise would be the case. So the type of tax increase projections that the finance minister made last February, or even that he mooted in October, is unlikely to come to pass when he speaks to the budget in a few weeks' time, on the 25th. So this is actually benefiting South Africans to the extent that it's benefiting the fiscus in terms of lower debt service costs. Real rates, I hinted at the idea that we could see further interest rate cuts this year. This is the real repo rate. In other words, the nominal repo rate that the Reserve Bank adjudicates as its policy, less inflation, and it's still fairly high, perhaps signaling, as I've alluded to, the prospect of further interest rate cuts. Pouring all of my narrative into a single exhibit. It doesn't appear glistening when you look at South Africa's GDP growth forecast for this year and next. This gradual ascendancy to 2% over a 3-year horizon. Of course, it's markedly improved than the 0.5% growth that we had in 2024. Household consumption expenditure, we think, will be steady state at around 2% over the near term, and fixed capital formation, which is just fixed investment, fairly favorably. We can cheer the idea of fairly low inflation for the near to medium term, lower interest rates, and more or less a steady rand over the near term. I'll end more or less where I started. South Africa is shifting from stabilization to momentum. A miracle is not yet going to be unfolding, and compounding is not yet going to befall us. But this could be a turning point. What could go wrong? I said a few times, politics is usually the bedeviling aspect of South African macro and social society. Local government elections at the end of this year, quite possibly early 2027 when the window allows. Another significant calendar event is the ANC's own party elections in the fourth quarter of 2027, and then on to national elections in 2029. At a national level, we have been fortunate, at least by the market's judgment, to have a government of national unity with a degree of semblance and harmony. And that has becalmed markets and becalmed investors. But at a local level, coalitions, which have already been part and parcel of South African society since 2021, have been less constructive. One hopes out of the forthcoming local government elections, where there no doubt will be a reshaping of municipal or metro coalitions, that it is far more constructive with regard to policy choices, because as South Africans, we now know very well that local, municipal, and metro elections and activities shape national outcomes. Water woes, electricity woes, perhaps fairly dealt with, and logistic woes. The reform in that agenda has been progressing fairly well. But South Africa is still beset with service delivery process of substantial and epic proportions. And we would argue that in the State of the Nation address delivered tonight, if the President focuses on two things in addition to celebrating the milestones, one is aggregate governance, or more broadly, the rule of law, and takes cue from the Madlanga Commission and the parliamentary inquiry, and asserts himself towards remediating South Africa's government infractions. That'll be one significant confidence-boosting commitment. The other is simply criminality, focusing on criminality in South Africa, which we believe is a very significant dent to South Africa's GDP, potentially costing us 1% of GDP growth sacrifice each year. Let me conclude there. I've probably overstayed my welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gulam. You definitely haven't overstayed your welcome. I think you've really given us a comprehensive outlook, and maybe that negative sentiment has come down a little bit. It certainly has for me, which is a good thing. Andrew, if I may invite you to please come and join us as well on the stage. And then I'm also going to ask to come up onto stage our good professor, who he doesn't want me calling him professor, but listen. If I had studied this long to get my professor, I would also do that. And now my iPad doesn't want to open. Can you believe this? Hold on. I'm going to get your beautiful introduction. Okay, Professor Justin Barnes, the Executive Director of the Toyota Vessels Institute for Manufacturing Studies. He's an Associate Professor at the Gordon Institute of Business Science and the Director of African Industrialization Services, a specialist advisory firm supporting industrial development across the continent. So this is where we're going to sit for a little bit. We're going to have a bit of a discussion, and then I'm going to open up the floor to some questions as well. So from the outset, I'm going to ask everyone to keep your answers short, sharp, to the point, and we're going to try and get as much as we possibly can, including some of these wonderful questions that I think have arisen in the audience after both yours, Andrew, and Gulam's talk as well. Justin, this is where I come to you, and I begin asking you this. So you work at the intersection of policy and industrial competitiveness. That's my understanding of what it all is. So we talk about South Africa contributing roughly 5% to GDP through automotive and over 22% of manufacturing output. But localization levels have plateaued and EV supply chains are still thin. So let's start there. And I want to get your perspectives on exactly how disruption manifesting in the automotive value chain right now needs to look and how we need to work this.
Yeah, and thank you, and good morning, everybody. I think the challenge with disruption is trying to understand the national dynamic as well as the global dynamic. Because when we think of the automotive industry in South Africa, what we're talking about is a sequence of value-adding activities that are fully locked in to a global value chain, both on the input side and on the output side. So we're connected to these disruptions that are happening geopolitically globally. We're connected to the environmental shifts, I think, that have been well articulated already this morning. And then, of course, we've got our own national dynamics. And the challenge is when we're exporting, we're partly being disrupted by some of the issues we're dealing with nationally, but we also being challenged by all of the global changes that are afoot. In our domestic market, we have the global challenges because, of course, we have a large number of supply chain inputs coming into our manufacturing operations, and our local content is around 40%. So there's 60% of the content in our locally manufactured vehicles that are sourced internationally. But then those vehicles find their way into the domestic market as well as internationally. So we fractured, and I think Gulam, you spoke about a bifurcated world, and in a way, there's almost a schizophrenia, I think, that we have to deal with in our own automotive environment, where we're dealing with the global and we're dealing with the local. The problem is, and I think Andrew articulated this very clearly in his presentation, is we're so exposed to the global. 81% of our exports, 400,000 vehicles, means 320,000 vehicles are going into the European market area. We're only making 200,000 vehicles for our own market. So when we talk about the energy transition in the European market area and some of the not-so-smart things we think they're doing but are forcing, we're subjected to them at a much greater level than we are in terms of what's happening in our own domestic market. And our ability to shape those and our ability to influence is minimized. But when we talk about what's happening locally, we, of course, have a lot more leverage. 5% of GDP, half of that is manufacturing, and half of it is in the dealers, workshops, and in the aftermarket. So the question is, where does the disruption sit, and what agency do we have in relation to those disruptions, whether they be technological, environmental, or geopolitical?
Yeah, I love that because, I mean, you just took the words out of my mouth. Is it technology? Is it trade policy? Is it capital allocation? Is it skills? Or is it really just a combination of all of those together?
That's
Is
what
it?
makes life interesting. It's a combination.
A little bit
of all
too
of-
interesting sometimes. We don't want it to be this interesting. I'm going to stick with you for one more thing. I mean, when Andrew was speaking and he was talking about Europe's 2035 CO2 target, effectively ending the new ICE exports, okay, into the market. So if South Africa doesn't build these battery electric capacity locally, what sort of, what happens to these export plants? What do we do?
Okay, so it's a really important question. I think Andrew in this presentation outlined the importance of Africa. So we have a major challenge. We have our own major market of 600,000 vehicles, and then essentially we have no consumption of new vehicles between us and the Sahara Desert. The second biggest new vehicle market in sub-Saharan Africa is Côte d'Ivoire, sitting at around 50,000 vehicles versus our 600,000 vehicles. That doesn't mean there isn't demand in those countries. There's actually huge demand, except they import second-hand vehicles from the US, from Europe, from Japan. If there was a coordination of automotive policy in Africa, we would have market consumption of up to 5 million vehicles if we include North Africa as part of the total picture. So our ability to shift towards being an important supplier of vehicles for the African market, where we have a strong capability in ladder chassis-based product. I mean, we're really good at making pickups, which is, of course, the type of technology that is perfect for economies with infrastructure that is not that advanced yet. So it's important that we find ways of creating regional value chains to take advantage of these African opportunities. If we look beyond that, there's developing Asia, and I think, Guillaume, you've highlighted that's going to trade internally. It's going to be very difficult for us to break into developing Asia, where, of course, there would be demand for our type of product. And we'll be locked out of the US for a period, which means the EU remains, and the European market area remains really important to us. And that's going to challenge us. My response, though, is we're very good at making motor cars in South Africa.
Yeah.
We're not that great at making engines or drivetrains anyway. We've always imported those, by and large. We do have some engine production, and we do obviously make some of the drivetrain technology, but specifically the transmission, the gearbox, we don't make. So we import those. Battery electric motor cars still have welded bodies, they still have to be painted, there's still lots of glass and lots of plastic and lots of other formed products. We make those now. So I don't think we're as threatened by this new energy vehicle shift as is sometimes being suggested because of our linkage into the global value chain.
Okay, I'm feeling even better now. I really am. Andrew, how are you feeling? Because, when you hear things like that, what does it mean? Let's go now to the plant floor in real terms, with everything that's been said.
From a production point of view?
Yeah, on the plant floor, production point of view.
So I think that we have the capability to transition to all forms of new energy vehicles. It's not a skills issue, and it's also not a technology issue. So I think Justin's 100% correct. We need to retain our presence in Europe in terms of exporting because Africa is not going to be able to sustain us and South Africa is not going to be able to sustain us. But there are mechanisms that we need to deal with. So, for example, for us to be able to export to Europe, we have to achieve a rule of origin requirement. And as soon as we import a full battery pack from outside of Africa and Europe, we can't achieve that hurdle rate. So these are very clear policy issues, negotiation issues between the South African government and Europe and South African government and the UK that have started, but are critical if we are going to make this transition. So the challenge for us is a lot of these aspects are almost outside of our control. And we have to move forward with the knowledge that these hurdles will be addressed, provide the right input, and create the right frameworks for discussion and engagements. At the same time, in Africa, move forward on the basis that these policy issues in each of the countries will slowly be addressed, where they start to restrict imported used vehicles, where they start to manage their borders a bit more effectively and don't have the leakages that they have with grey imports. And we start to trade into Africa in a far more structured way. So that gives us a huge opportunity, I think, to grow, but we are in a very uncertain time.
Yeah.
And we can't manage and lead the way we used to 20 years ago. It is complex, and that's fine. We have to be comfortable with the complexity, and we have to be comfortable with the fact that we've got to make these steps to be more resilient and adaptive so that when the opportunities arise, we're ready for them.
Yeah. So you mentioned, gosh, I mean, I must say the stats for the African continent and how it's dropped is quite frightening, and that's a place to actually change. But I want to focus a little bit on policy, and I want to speak to government. So obviously we've heard that government signals a revised automotive framework this year. In fact, we were hoping now, very, very soon. Perhaps maybe tonight. Who knows? Who knows? But we're waiting on this. Are discussions progressing? Do you know anything that we don't know at this point?
Yes, of course.
Tell us. We all your friends here.
What I can share is there's a heightened level of engagement. We had the opportunity to present and discuss from all the different stakeholders in the auto sector to the portfolio committee in Cape Town a few weeks ago. We've had engagements with the DTIC, we've had engagements with the Office of the Presidency. So there's a heightened level of engagements and awareness and discussions. But quite frankly, that's not necessarily new. We've been talking about this for 1.5 years at least, 1.5 to 2 years. But I'm encouraged. The signs seem to be good. I think the onus also is on us to present a very well thought through pragmatic solution that is plausible and easy for government to be able to implement. You know, we can't go there with open hands and say, just give us more. We have to find a way in which we can balance the books.
Yeah.
And I think we are. And for that reason, I'm fairly hopeful that we'll be successful.
When you sit at that table, what are you proposing? What is Toyota specifically pushing for?
So I can't go through all the details because we're in the middle of those negotiations, right? And I don't want to
Fair enough. Jeopardize anything.
jeopardize,
Absolutely.
you know, that relationship. But essentially, it's on the lines of those three pillars that I presented.
Okay.
How do we make CKD production more competitive? We still want a balance of imports, but we need to rebalance things a little bit. How do we accelerate the transition to new energy vehicles? So we need to provide customers better value for new energy vehicles in South Africa, and how do we manufacture energy vehicles, and how do we sustain our exports? And it's balancing all three of those in a way where it makes sense from the fiscus and makes sense from our economic contribution.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gulam, let me bring you in. I mean, from what we've heard now, where do you see this in the automotive industry? I mean, when it comes to these decisions, these policies, these things that need to change to fast-track this, what are you seeing?
So, Leanne, I see it through the lens of, if I could choose the word, mobility. Mobility is changing monumentally in terms of, let's say, modern-day practices where the youth may not necessarily see car ownership as precious as previous generations. They're far more light-footed, fleet-footed. You also have urban residential development where, dare I say, little things like parking is not as prioritized as it was yesteryear. And so that, in a sense, is somewhat of a headwind. I have industry experts on my flanks. I mean, just maybe trying to lean into marketing. And then there's brand loyalty, brand evolution. There are new brands that are incredibly new, 2 decades in the market, and incredibly significant, and infusing it into a new emergent buying market. And this is not to insert a halo of fear and torrent into this market, but consolidation, brand loyalty. The phrase that has been used plentifully so far is inserting into supply chains, whether it's local, regional, or global supply chains. That is what the standard mantra that economists would suggest, and it's far easier said than done. And I would be quickly seized with being too liberal with my tongue in making that suggestion, especially when, as we've gone through earlier discussions, the Asian depth of manufacturing, the Asian depth of infrastructure, and Asian cunning with regard to the manner in which they provide incentives for their industries to move from infant to sizable. The South African policy environment has been crucial to undergirding the South African motor industry. And our authorities have been tardy of late. They've been less than progressive, dare I suggest. But we have got new leadership within the DTIC, which does appear to be having, or at least exhibiting, a more friendly ear to industry. And we're seeing this relative improvement in reception, not just with regard to industrialization policy, but I merely mention it as an observation, but even black economic empowerment policy. Favorably, the authorities are looking less possessively towards, let's say, equity ownership in facilitating transactions, and instead looking for equity equivalent dimensions. My point simply being, slowly, sometimes maybe even begrudgingly, there is a slightly more receptive ear within government circles, but it still is moving too pedestrianly, dare I say.
Yeah. Do you want to add?
Yeah, I'd like to add.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the schizophrenia, because when we think of our industry from an export perspective, it's about the export competitiveness of our product. And there's two dimensions there: infrastructure, transport, the factor costs, energy, all that needs to be competitive in order for us to compete with a product that could be sourced anywhere else globally. But we also then have an incentive structure built around a rebate mechanism within our auto policy framework, and one needs to get that appropriately aligned in order to ensure that we can sustain our export competitiveness. The schizophrenia comes to the local market, because when we think of the local market, we have to think about these production competitiveness challenges, but we also need to think of the market. And of course, we have a very large vehicle fleet in South Africa, over 1 million vehicles. We have the 600,000 vehicles sold locally. We have hundreds of thousands of people employed servicing the fleets. And so we need to build local competitiveness, and we need to protect the market, but we don't want to transfer costs onto the market, because, of course, the more affordable we can make vehicles, then the more they can be consumed, and we'll obviously grow the aggregates of output. For government, it's a fine balance, because the biggest beneficiary of the South African auto industry is not the industry, it's actually the South African government. An inconvenient fact is the average level of tax on a South African vehicle is 120,000 Rand. So on average, when we buy a motor car on the market, 120,000 Rand is being handed over to the government in the form of VAT, the ad valorem, the carbon tax, and the tire levy. For a vehicle that we call quintile 5 vehicle, so going up over the sort of 800,000 Rand mark, the tax burden on a car is 34%. So the government secures huge fiscal benefit from the automotive market. If that market declines, it's going to have serious fiscal consequences in terms of the revenue flowing into the government. But of course, there's a serious economic consequence for the industry if it's overtaxed and the market is being penetrated too aggressively by imported vehicles that don't have the sort of underlying value addition. So this industry creates 120 billion rands worth of direct gross value added, just through the 7 vehicle assemblers. And so you're trying to balance the tensions between what's good for production, but you also have to ensure that the market is not negatively affected by creating too much protection for the local industry that would allow for some form of price advantage that the consumer ultimately has to bear. So the local complexities are difficult to deal with, because you're trying to deal with the tensions. On the export side, it's actually easier, although it's harder because of all the global forces that shape what opens and closes for us.
Yeah. Okay. I'm getting around that. But I'm glad you said carbon tax, because that's a big thing today. I don't know if you guys have seen it. There's talk about a possibility of a pause on that may not be going ahead, that the headline is reading, South Africa eyes carbon tax pause as markets watch US inflation. I'm quoting this off Reuters. So that could be interesting. I mean, you've already made great points there, and in terms of how that goalpost is being pushed further and further. I mean, obviously, you know, you've got to watch things and move as we go. So I want to ask you, Andrew, as we look at something like that, are we transitioning as South Africa at the right pace, or is there just too much pressure on us to move faster? What do you think? I mean, let's talk about this electrification issue.
No, I think we need to move faster. I think we need to consider the South African market as part of a global value chain. We have global multinationals producing vehicles for first world countries and third world countries around the world. And we don't want to be in a position where we start to lag behind where everyone else is moving. Of course, as you've now said, the whole business case for new energy vehicles is being rethought and is coming under enormous amount of pressure. That means that as our parent global multinationals are investing, they're finding it very difficult because you're investing in all of this new energy vehicle drivetrains at low or negative margins and trying to sustain your current business. So South Africa, we don't want to transition too fast because we want to be at the right point in that innovation cost curve, but we also don't want to be too slow. I think we are too slow.
Okay.
I think South African consumers very, very open to the drivetrain transition. There's no problem with that. It's just that we need to be more competitive in providing those drivetrains. And to do that, we need some changes and restructuring.
Gulam, your face is telling me a story there. What do you think?
No,
Can we afford this?
And it's a tonic listening to Andrew and Justin. At a consumer level, I've always had this instinct that nobody wants to drive an appliance. They want to drive a sexy car. They don't want an electric vehicle that looks mundane. You know, maybe not the coolest thing to drop your teenager off at school with a car that looks quite ordinary. And so design features in this envelope as well.
Ooh, can I pause you there? Wait until you see what you're going to see. Oh my gosh, there is nothing ordinary about what's happening under there. Anyway, carry on.
So I guess just to my mind, in addition to all of the micro elements of cost and policy, design, range anxiety, which I think has largely been resolved, and time to charge, which I think has largely been resolved. So I think that there is this combination of forces with regard to consumer perception surrounding this conversion that probably over the last 12 months or so, significant hurdles have been surmounted.
Yeah.
So I guess it's just to complement the remarks surrounding competitiveness and policy that is supportive, the fiscus that also can provide support, as well as the taxes that it takes. It also is a significant contributor to the export prowess because of import credits and so forth. But successful motor vehicle manufacturers, I think, if they're able to also solve what has thus far been the holy grail, as I say, range anxiety, quick to charge, and an aesthetic appeal, brand appeal. And I think, I don't say this because I'm in this audience, but I think Toyota has had, I would say, revolution as opposed to evolution in terms of design in recent years, which makes it appeal. will conclude with this. I travel to Japan very often. We try and lure investment from Japan to South Africa. And one of the things that I've always marveled about when I visit Japan is the enormity of brand depth. If you're older than 40 years old, and I know that's me and not you, we grew up, the world grew up with Japanese brands, from Panasonic televisions, Nikon cameras, the entire Japanese industry with regard to automobiles. And I've always struggled to reconcile how would that extent of brand depth does the Japanese industry club globally with that level of brand gravitas. And I think it's slipping, if I can be blunt, but not totally lost and can be regained. Because simply, as I said, It has brands that are that have enjoyed legacy trust, that I think Japan is in some respects unsurpassed.
Yeah, love that. Very, very interesting perspectives there. But yeah, it's interesting where we are right now, and yeah, it's great to see it. But I mean, I'll just give you a personal example. As I drive around in this Lexus now that I've got to charge, my husband's advice: do it in the day when the electricity's on the solar, so it doesn't cost us much, right? So this leads me just into my next question. So I'm pivoting from this moving and move fast to the realities of where we are as a country. So I worry, and this happens in most sectors of South Africa. Are we at risk of creating a two-speed mobility economy here, Justin? Because for me, it looks like the EV will be for the affluent and the ones whose husband tells you charge it in the day when the sun's shining, because we're privileged enough to have solar, and then ICE is for everyone else. What do you think about that?
It's a great observation because it talks to the heart of the inconvenient truth that politicians will not accept, is that an ICE vehicle measured against its direct BEV equivalent has no comparison. The ICE is substantially cheaper still. And the only reason why BEV would sell is because it's subsidized. And so if we look at the growth of battery electric vehicle sales, it's either because governments have made ICE vehicles more expensive through some form of additional tax to make the BEV comparatively cheaper, or they've heavily subsidized the BEV to make it cheaper than the ICE. No subsidy, no BEV sales. That is an unfortunate truth.
Yeah.
Now, that is changing because the gap in pricing between the BEV and the ICE, and of course then you've got the hybrid, the soft hybrid and the plug-in hybrid in between, the gap is closing, and it will close at some point in the not too distant future. The challenge is how much of this is driven through politics and how much of it is driven through the technological and the economic changes within the structure of the vehicle industry as it responds to the political direction. And so we are seeing this get closer. That challenge as you've highlighted will go away, even in South Africa, at some point in the future.
Yeah.
The problem is, none of us know. And I can speak with some confidence because when I've done policy work in the EV space, and I speak with Toyota, not just here, but head office, or I speak to the German multinationals or the American multinationals, everybody gives me different answers. And they're not giving me different answers out of their lack of understanding of the issue. They're giving me different answers because they understand the issue so well. It all depends. We need more technology breakthroughs. There are levels of progress that are being made. So what does it mean for us in South Africa? At the moment, battery electric vehicles are consumed by people who are not price sensitive. Vehicle assemblers are discounting their hybrids and their battery electric vehicles for brand building in order to get their foot in the door, often selling them at a discount relative to the money being made on their ICE product. And that's fine when you've got a marginal set of numbers on your electric vehicle line. It becomes more complicated when it becomes a bigger portion of what you're selling. So the South African future, at least for the next 5 to 10 years, is going to be ICE dominated, with multi-pathways sort of embedded in that as we move towards far more soft hybridization and then plug-in hybrids. BEV will come, but we'll see more luxury BEV than we'll see small BEV in our market. And part of that's our geography, our urban densities, the differential use patterns in our markets relative to sort of large metropolitan areas where BEV's got a different case. Okay. There's one more point I want to make, which is 80% of vehicles in South Africa are sold to private individuals and 20% are sold to corporate fleet owners, whether it be government, car rental companies, or corporates. 20% of the market, therefore, has sophisticated total cost of ownership models, where they're looking at the issue that you just highlighted, Leanne, which is what's the cost of charging it and what the kilowatt hours, and doing the calculation over 5 or 6 years as to what the benefit is. 80% of the consumers just buy a motor car because it's sexy and they can afford it and they're going to feel good in that motor car for a period. That's going to be driven by the value embodied in the product as seen, And until the gap between BEV and ICE is actually closed at a technological level and at a scale level, when there's enough BEV being produced globally, they will become competitive. But I think we're 5 to 10 years away from that, unless politicians decide otherwise.
Sure,
Can I jump in?
you can.
I don't think that it's a question of ICE versus BEV. Because when you asked me, do we need to accelerate faster, my answer was we need to accelerate faster on NEV, new energy vehicles, not BEV.
Okay.
And this is important because we firmly believe that hybrids, plug-in hybrids, even fuel cells for larger vehicles is going to play a key role, and they're not just transitional technologies. There's a narrative said that everybody's going to get to BEV. I'm not sure that's true, and I certainly don't think it's true in South Africa in the next 10 years or in Africa in the next 10 years. So right now, our hybrid technology produces a 33% drop in CO2 emissions. And every year we introduce new generation hybrids, that increases. Plug-in hybrid goes even further. Plug-in hybrids now, from Toyota, you have a 100-kilometer zero-emission driving range. So you can commute Monday to Friday with zero emissions, but then you can drive with a 1,000-kilometer range anywhere in South Africa, go on holiday. We're not going to end up with 30, 40,000 charging stations in South Africa anytime soon. It's not ever going to be a long-range solution, not in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Yes, it's possible for some households to have a BEV as one of their vehicles where they only commute in the metropolitan area, and the other one could be one of the other drivetrain, electrified drivetrains, hybrid, plug-in hybrid, that they would use when they do need to drive outside of their normal commuting, circle. So I think it's very important that the discussions around accelerating all of these different electrified drivetrains as opposed to just thinking about where we're going to be with BEVs.
Love it. Very nice. Okay, I want to add 2 questions to you, and then I'm going to open up the floor very quickly so that we can quickly take a comfort break. So, Andrew, Nissan sold its Rosslyn plant assets to Chery. I need to ask you this question. Obviously, this is not just a transaction. It really does signal that Chinese OEMs are moving from importers to manufacturers as well. That's a big sign there. Is this healthy competitive evolution or a structural warning sign for legacy OEMs?
So I don't think it's about legacy OEMs. And of course, I think we welcome any investment into South African automotive value chain. And I think on the surface of it, it's very good that Chery has purchased the factories so that there's a future sustainable outlook for that operation. They were able to sustain the majority of the employees, and I think that's very, very welcomed.
Yeah.
However, as South Africa, we should judge whether this is going to be better than before by looking at the manufacturing value addition. So Nissan had a relatively moderate volume with good levels of local content. If Chery comes in and increases the volume but has no local components supplying into the factory, the manufacturing value addition will actually go down, and as South Africa, we'll be worse off than before.
Sure.
We don't know the details of it, but that's how I think we should be judging this. And in the next few years to come, it'll be very easy for us to understand, was this or wasn't this a good thing for South Africa?
Okay. There's a nice talking point as well. So, but before I open up, there's one question, and the question I think we all want to know. Last year, you described the industry as volatile but healthy. I want to know this year. So you always give us this big number, and I'm hoping you can do it again for us. Where does the South African new vehicle market close in 2026?
Am I allowed to adjust my numbers after listening to Gulam's presentation? No, I think we're going to see a progression from where we were before. And just to share that in January, if you look at our seasonally adjusted annualized rate, we were just under 600,000 in January. So it's been good. We've seen good progression, as I mentioned before, to the 597. We're forecasting a market of 630,000.
Wow.
So good growth of 5.5%. Very difficult to forecast how the metrics within each one of the segments is going to change, as I showed you before. But that's a healthy growth of 5.5%. What it does mean is because January was just under 600,000, to get to that average of 630, the second half of the year is obviously going to be much higher.
Yeah.
So we are forecasting positive movements, and a lot of it's born on what Guillaume was presenting and the sentiment we're seeing in the markets, feedback from fleet customers, feedback from private customers. So we're very bullish. Yeah, I think 630,000 is where we think we'll end up, but very difficult to forecast. I mean, it's tricky.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, as you say, there's the first half that we are talking about now, and then there's that other half. So
Exactly.
there's a lot happening this year. Okay, questions. Has anybody got a question that they would like to ask? So there we go. Already one hand up over there. There comes a mic.
Morning, Andrew Brendan from Marilla Media. Quick question, with the privatization of the Durban port, do we see that spilling over into the railways and making your guys' lives much easier moving forward?
Okay, so over the last few years, there's been a lot of progress in collaborating and working between business and government on how to create a lot more economic benefit from our state-owned enterprises. And we know there's been a big focus on energy, a big focus on transport and logistics. And I think that is progressing very well. So the reform agenda on transport and logistics is not quite as fast as we'd like it to be, but it's very deep and very, very important. Because what it does provide is a mechanism for private companies to operate on the assets of either the port or the rail. And so we've seen one of the port terminals in Durban looking for a private operator, and that's going to soon come into fruition. We've seen significant improvements in the port operations and their lead times, and that's now progressing towards rail. So we have some fundamental reforms already in place, but this year there are two big ones that need to happen. There's a revised network statement that will be issued next month, which will improve the investability of private companies to invest either on concession or participating in the rail network. And the second one is the National Rail Act, which will come a little bit later in the year, which will be really fundamental to the change. Rail does take time. As the private companies invest, for them to go and purchase locomotives or wagons, etc., it takes a lot of time. So we are hopeful, and Minister Creasy has announced that there will be 4 successful contracts awarded this year. So we should be able to see some early wins with rail. And over time, and this is going to take about 2 or 3 years to answer your question before we see real improvements in rail performance, costs, etc. And I want to quote you, we used to transport vehicles every day between Durban and Gauteng. Now we have 1 train a week and it takes 4 days. Sure. So that's a fundamental area that needs to be addressed, but I think we can be very encouraged by the reforms that are on the right track. But this year we need to bed those down and finalize them. It's going to be a critical year for us, and we should see real material changes in 27, 28.
Okay, great. Okay, there we go.
I'm Melinda Ferguson from Cape Talk and City Press. I think my question is for Gulam. Do you think Trump's tariffs have backfired on the US, if you can understand what I'm saying, in terms of what his intention was? And how dangerous do you think Donald Trump is in terms of a psychotic imperialist leader?
Justin, this is where you and I step
Good luck,
away.
Gulam.
Can I summon a friend to answer that? So backfired is a strong word, but I would say that President Trump has accelerated the shift towards fears of influence. I did say during the former remarks that nearshoring, friendshoring, is increasingly shaped by commercial trust. And I do think, therefore, supply chains are going to fragment and reorder. The short answer to your question is supported by the notion that for several years now, we've witnessed that 7 of the world's 10 fastest growing supply chains exclude the United States. And I think President Trump's actions will only accelerate that. The second layer that I may inject to this audience that we think about is what we're calling an arc, or a geographic arc of prosperity. And we're saying the century is going to be defined by this arc of linkage between Africa, the Middle East, and the Far East. In terms of demography, that arc holds at least 2/3 of humanity. In terms of capital provision, for instance, there's a new vector of growth, and that's the Middle East. In 2022 and 2023, over 2 years, Middle East nations provided $113 billion of capital to Africa, 3 times in excess of what China provided. So put differently, the Middle East may be considered middle nation status, but it's a superpower in terms of liquidity provision, in terms of capital, in terms of investment, going to energy, ports, other logistics, and even retail and hospitality. So this notion of the global south fastening its cords, and particularly catalyzed by the buffeting caused by President Trump, will accelerate. And I guess just the last point I'll make in this respect, Mark Carney in Davos also spoke about how middle nations should be coming together to form a new consensus, new rules, and mutually beneficial gains. What he didn't mention, or at least was my interpretation, when he talked about middle nations coming together, they've already done so, and it's called the Global South. It's the Global South that has been wiring together now for several years under the guise of first BRICS, then BRICS Plus, language such as the Global South. We use language such as South-South chords. And I think what he was mooting, without saying it, is the developed world, excluding the US, joining emerging markets in forming this constellation. It sounds a lot more easier than it is practically going to happen. But we, at least for 2 years, have been talking about a new bifurcated world where it is the US fraying transatlantic ties, which it has, and a developed and emerging market consensus that could emerge. And we've seen that develop and suggest over the last year. So in short, I think, yes, American hegemony has probably peaked, but that does not mean it's the end of American empire, just simply a greater contestation.
Okay, I'm going to take one more question over here, and then, yeah, I think we're going to have to start wrapping up.
Hi, Gulam. I think this is more for you, Philip van der Putte from Independent Newspapers. A quick question. I suppose that's why I'm here. We are seeing probably salary increases, lucky between 3 and 5%, yet everything else is increasing way above that. School fees, FMCGs, medical aids, your security that you have to pay for them, that's increasing well above that. Is that sustainable, or are we just becoming poorer?
So you're correct in highlighting that there is dispersion in the overall basket. And I would even go so far as to say that the poorer communities benefit less from this headline level of inflation, given that their basket is experiencing relatively high inflation than high-income consumers. But the overall inflation level has benefited over the last year quite disproportionately from lower fuel prices. Of course, a function of the stronger rand, as well as the fall and stabilization at a lower level in terms of oil prices. So fuel inflation has been manifest in suppressing overall inflation. In addition to that, debt service cost, because of falling interest rates, has also therefore meant generally lower inflation and greater share of discretionary income available. Food inflation has actually not been as punitive, generally speaking, as one would assume. We've had a better farming outcome, generally speaking, and also maybe prospectively, because of difficulty in agricultural farming, there could be pressure on meat prices in due course, but that has yet to enter into the overarching realm. And then the last thing I would just say, within the realm of consumer goods, electronic consumer goods, South Africans continue to benefit from disinflation, even deflation, in terms of that category. But to your point, it's still fairly dispersed. Low-income consumers benefiting less from the sense of a 3 to 3.5% inflation, and the high-income consumers slightly more.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, last one. You squeezed in that last minute we got left.
Hi, Anton from Adventure Africa. Andy, this is more for you guys. With ad valorem tax, isn't it time that government starts realizing that it needs to be adjusted and downward? And how much does it need to be adjusted for you guys to see a growth in sales?
Was that a question to me? So I think Justin referred earlier to the average tax on a 500,000 Rand vehicle, on an 800,000 Rand vehicle. It is enormous, and it's made up, obviously, import duties, ad valorem tax, which is a luxury tax, CO2 tax, we have a tire levy, and there's a carbon tax on manufacturers as well. And the question becomes, how do we adjust that so that we can see a volume benefit, so the net income that's received by the fiscus remains strong? And I think that's the question. It is possible to do that. So we know about price elasticity, roughly 1 to 3. You drop a vehicle's price by 1%, it will grow by 3%. So yes, I think there is some potential. Ad valorem's the obvious way to tweak that, and Justin's doing a lot of modeling on this, of how we can tweak that ad valorem portion of that tax to generate an improvement in affordability, but also understanding that we need to balance the books, so to speak. So I think that would be my direct answer. I don't know if you want to add to that.
I mean, this is a really important point, because the ad valorem tax in South Africa hasn't been adjusted for an extended period of time. And so what was ostensibly a luxury tax is now just a vehicle tax. The ad valorem was set when our cheapest cars were below 40,000 Rand, and it started at 40,000 Rand because, and it had this very sort of flat gradient for a period, and it only started becoming punitive at around the 500,000 Rand mark. You can imagine 30 years after that was set, it's now punitive for entry-level vehicles in the South African market. So the ad valorem is quite distortionary. But for me, what it highlights is the challenge of dealing with the South African market and South African production. So to date, policy in the automotive industry has been within the responsibility of the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. And then, of course, the Department of Transport looks after the vehicle fleet and vehicle registrations and those issues. And National Treasury goes and collects as much money as it can from the auto industry as possible. That's been the sort of the structure. Going forward, it has to be coordinated, because we cannot have this massive overtaxing of the auto industry on the domestic market side, very generous APDP support, and then a Ministry of Transport that sort of allows zombie cars back into the system, the registering of grey imports, and basically a lack of professionalism of the maintenance of the vehicle fleet, when that is critical to the safety and the maintenance of a competitive new vehicle and second-hand vehicle market. So these three things have to tie up in order for us to actually get the full potential of both production and market sales. And the ad valorem has to be dealt with. It's highly problematic. I'm a development economist. I can tell you it's anti-developmental. It does not work in the favor of the market. It does not work in favor of the development of the industry. I'm not aware of any price elasticity calculations on whether the vehicles are now overtaxed. I've seen nothing from government for 30 years on this ad valorem tax, and it needs to be adjusted for us to move forward.
Okay, I'm leaving it there. I have to leave it there. I think we're all on information overload, but information that I hope you have found incredibly worthy, because it really has been a brilliant morning. So thank you to all of you. Thank you so much. What we're going to do now is just have a quick leg stretch, literally 5 minutes. We are going to start in 5 minutes sharp, because this is the exciting part where we are now seeing how we are going to achieve those big numbers and the goals and everything that we've been speaking about building up to this moment. So please, if you need to go to the bathroom, we've literally got 5 minutes. But if you don't, please stay where you are. Just stretch your legs, and we will be back with you at 12:05. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, let us begin. Can I ask you to please take your seats? All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Yeah, you see, when you save the best and the exciting stuff for last, I get everybody back in here so quickly, it's unbelievable. So, as any good woman does, I have taken my heels off and put my driving shoes on, okay? Oh my goodness, I am so proud of myself for standing through the first half with my heels on. Guys, I know I don't expect you to understand it, but the few ladies in the audience, I know you get me. I know you get me. I'm so proud of myself. You have no idea, but now it's over. The show is over for me. I am now in driving mode. And this is the really exciting part. And I am not joking, guys. What you're about to see is something spectacular. And this man has got such a lacquer job. Poor Andrew has to talk numbers and the whole thing with the government and ministers and discussions and forecasts and this, that, and the next. And then we've got Leon, who comes here with a big smile and all these amazing products to just blow our socks off. And he does such a good job of doing that. So it is such a pleasure to welcome up on stage this very much anticipated sales and marketing overview by our Senior Vice President of Toyota South Africa Motors, Leon Turon. So Leon is going to share Toyota strategy, the 2025 performance, the strategic updates from Gazoo Racing, man, those cars are gorgeous, and the exciting lineup of new offerings for 2026. And a little bit later on, he's going to be joined on stage by the one and only Donovan Goliath, who is just absolutely awesome, and you guys are going to love him. But before Leon comes up on stage, let's take a glimpse and see what Toyota has been up to in 2025.
Let's take a look at some of the highlights from 2025, starting with our corporate activities. Moving on to Toyota. Toyota Gazoo Racing continued our dominance on the track and in the dirt. And in the world of Lexus, here's what happened at Hino. Looking at Kinto. And finally, Automark.
Good morning. What an amazing year we had. Leanne, I don't know that the dress code was sneakers, otherwise I would have put mine on because I see Donovan also has sneakers. But I think it'll be frowned upon. Next time I'll do it. But I also would like to just give a very warm welcome to our members of the media. Thank you for taking the time to be here this morning. And of course, our component suppliers. A lot of our tier one suppliers are here. I've been fortunate enough to have met some of you already, and the important role that you play in our business. And then, of course, our dealer network. They are the guys that give me the grey hair, but we kind of work through it every year. But what an amazing bunch of people, but an amazing bunch of business people. It's so nice to be associated with them. And of course, to the rest of the executives being invited for today. So, I'm going to be talking all about what we're going to be doing as Toyota for the year. We had our team brief about 2 weeks ago, and I gave them our game plan, but I'm not going to go into that kind of detail for today. So I'm really just going to give you a very high-level view of what we're going to be doing for 2025. I just want to put it out there. We are not scared of our competitors. We're not. We do welcome it. We like it. Because it makes us better, and at the end of the day, we have to sharpen our game. And that's the role that we have to play as the leading brand in the South African context. And that's what we're going to be doing this year. I recall, it was in 2016 when I had to fly to Japan. I was in charge of vehicle sales those days. And we started then already talking about what do we need to do as a company to make sure that we have an entry model range that we can fight, because we knew what was going to come our way. And already those years, the alliances discussion started. Linked to that was our whole mobility drive that we were on about, saying we want to create mobility for all. We want to give every single South African person the opportunity to own a vehicle, which is our mobility drive. We've been very, very successful, and I'll be sharing some numbers with you. We've been very successful in the entry market, and of course, we can see the price war that's going on in the entry market. We don't play price wars. We don't drop our prices on our vehicles because that's the wrong strategy. You simply hurt your brand, you hurt your retail value of your brand, because as you see on that video, we also have Automark, which is our used car business, which is very important to our dealer network. The last one being our multipath strategy. Akio Toyota, many years ago, said that's the direction we're going as a company, globally, Toyota Global, and that's what we've been pursuing. We are the leader in South Africa in terms of new energy vehicles, and we will continuously grow, and we will continuously find solutions to grow it even further going into the future. Now, I do like numbers, and I like to talk about numbers because it's quite significant. If you look at that number, if you look at 2023, that was our highest market share ever recorded in the Toyota world. Last year was our second highest volume number that we've ever recorded. The highest number was 152,000. Now, to put it into context, this year we're going to go for 153. To be exact, 153,178. I don't understand why we don't just round it off to 153,200, but it's 153,178. And that's the number that we want to achieve this year. It's approximately 8% growth, and we're going to go for it. But that market share and that volume that we managed to uphold, and if you look at how, we call it daijunko in Japanese, we've been very, very stable in our performance. We cannot achieve these numbers if we don't have a stable manufacturing base, if we don't have a stable supplier base. We can't do it. It's impossible. So again, the contribution that you've made in helping us achieve these numbers is quite impressive. And then, of course, our dealer network for helping us get to these numbers. I was so proud of these numbers last year because at some stage it didn't look like we were going to get there. But the dealers really pulled it out of the bag, and our manufacturing base supplied us the stock that we needed. So, of course, 46 years consecutive market leadership, something to be very, very proud of, and a number of 148,000. And our plan is that we want to grow the business even more in the future. Let's quickly look at our sales performance. And here we're going to be looking at product. You remember I spoke to you about what we did many years ago when we said we've got to have and we've got to capture the entry-level market. We're the only OEM in this country that has a model that compete in every segment of our market, from A segment right up to premium. Plus we have the truck division as well, which we're responsible for. We're the only OEM, and this was intentional. This was strategic intent to play in every single segment of the market because we knew what was going to come to the South African market. To be honest, I didn't see the scale that we're seeing it now, but we knew it was going to happen. But the scale that we're seeing is automotive insanity. Absolutely automotive insanity, because it's coming at us so fast. Even we sitting and looking at this saying, what is next? But just look at our share on small car. Our ambitious target that we've always set to ourselves was that we want to get to a 25% share. And it's still our target that we want to achieve. Currently we're at 20%, so the alliance has worked very well for us, but also good for the other alliance. If you look at C and D segment, today I'm going to be giving you some good news around what we're going to be doing on D segment and the reasons why we're doing it. But you'll see that in the C segment, crossover segment, Corolla Cross is absolutely dominant. Last year we sold a record number of just over 22,000 Corolla Crosses for the full year of 2025, which was a big number. Then we have Fortuner, and within the SUV section we have Land Cruiser. I don't know if you know this, but when you look at Land Cruiser, Prado last year was the #1 seller at the high end of SUV. Believe it or not, the second highest seller was Land Cruiser 300. Our plan now is, after today you'll see, is to grow that segment even more. Because we have aspirational customers that want to drive the brand called Land Cruiser. And you'll be very surprised to what you see, but I mean, you probably will know already because it's been all over social media. Then we talk about LCV. This is where we are highly, highly dominant in, but we're not arrogant about it, but we are very serious about protecting our LCV market. We are very serious about protecting it. And we will do everything in our power to protect it as much as what we can. Again, going back to our supplier base, our manufacturing base, to make sure that we get our vehicles on time, high quality, which we do get, so that we can sell to our customers. Then, of course, bus, van, and taxi. But look at Hino. Hino had actually a very good year last year. We've consolidated Hino because what's happening in the passenger side of our business and LCV, it's now happening in heavy trucks. There's the competitors are simply, it's a price war already, and it's mainly happening at your extra heavy truck section of our business. So what we're doing is we're saying, let's consolidate our business. Let's focus on our after-sales business and grow Hino further, step by step. But a 13% share is not bad. And we are number 3 within the truck space, within the South African context. I am pretty happy with that. It's a good place to be. If you look at Lexus performance, is really a good news story. I mean, the premium segment is simply dropping, radically dropping. Yet Lexus has grown our share from an average of about 1.9 to 3.5. This is a real good news story, and this has a lot to do with the key strategies that we've changed our dealer representation on Lexus. We've reformed Lexus, and we consolidated Lexus, and we said, we're quite happy to sell this. But we want our customers that experience Lexus must experience amazing. So Leanne, please talk to us. We'll get you into a Lexus very easily. The right people are sitting here that can help you. But this product is doing so well for us. And if you look at the model ranges that we've got now on Lexus, we are catering for that market. And we've seen this big jump from customers that drive predominantly Lexus moving into the GX models. And we're seeing a lot of competitive movement into GX and now the LX, which is really good. And that's why we see the growth. It's the first time since 2007 that we've achieved over 1,000 units sales. So very proud of this number. I'm very happy with this number. And this is what we're going to continue with. I've got to talk about Takata. You all have seen this. We've had the Takata airbag issue since 2007 when we started it. But it's not just a Toyota issue. There's a lot of other brands in South Africa that also have, because we use the same component. Last year, we've gone out very aggressively with campaigns. You've probably seen it in the social media, where we're really pushing customers to bring the vehicles into the dealer network so that we can replace those airbags. We call it a one-a-day campaign. We want each one of our dealers to at least do one a day so that we can get and finish all those vehicles. A lot of these vehicles are in rural areas. It's very difficult to get hold of them. But as Toyota, as a company, it's the right thing to do, is to get every one of these vehicles in and repair them. Really, I'm reaching out to the other OEMs today saying, please help us, because they also have vehicles fitted with these airbags, and we will continue with this drive for the next year. Something I'm very excited about, because we always talk about brand strategy, where you're going to put the brand, how you're going to manage the different brands. Last year at the global conference that was held in Japan, they announced the following, which is called the Toyota, or the Global Toyota New Brand Direction Approach. Toyota is the core. I think one of the speakers spoke about Toyota being your trusted brand. It's your volume brand. I always tease, I say the Toyota brand pays the water and lights, which is true. It's such a dominant force globally. The Toyota brand is key for us, and that's why it's in the center of our business. The second one being Lexus. Lexus is the leader in technology. Lexus, we get a lot out of Lexus from a futuristic technology base, which can also be used in Toyota. But it's a brand out there, it's a premium brand, and it's a well-accepted brand globally. Then we have the GR brand, which we call Wakudoki. It's about excitement. It's about developing, and the core function of GR is around development of future engineers, development of future technicians, because those people are scarce. GR plays a fundamental role in developing of people, but also creating exciting cars, ever better cars for our customers out there. Here's an exciting one, which is Century. Century is now a core brand. Century was always only sold in the Japanese domestic market. It will now be available globally, and we'll really push hard to get this brand into South Africa. But this is a very high-end brand, and volume is not a discussion here. It's not a brand that we will push on volume, but it's a bespoke, defines what we call pinnacle of Japanese luxury. Last one being Daihatsu. It's no news to most of you that we own Daihatsu. We would really like to get more involved now in Daihatsu in the South African context and give us an affordable option as a brand that we will definitely be investing in going into the future. At the global conference, I spoke about the supercar trio. Can I please play the video? Julle kom aan die klap. You know, every time when this was on the global stage last year, Andrew was fortunate enough to have been there. I would have loved to have been there. It was so exciting. You know, you look at what Toyota is doing, and we talk about multi-pathway strategy. This is multi-pathway strategy. We are building high-performance cars, which is linked to new energy vehicles. This is what it is. Our plan is to bring these vehicles in next year. No, we're not going to sell 1,000 a month. It's impossible. But we'll probably be bringing in between 10 and 14 next year, see how it goes. We'll be focusing on the road version. The track version is probably later, but is super expensive. But it's something that we're going to be definitely bringing in. And I'll touch more about it when I talk to you about Gazoo and what we're doing on Gazoo in terms of our factory and how this model is going to play a role within that, because it's very bespoke. These vehicles will not be delivered at a dealer. So we're going to have a very different strategy on how we're going to manage this very small volume, and obviously the customers being completely different. Let's have a look at this next video around Century. Absolutely stunning. There will be 3 models. One will be a obviously a sedan, a SUV, and a sports coupe. And that's what they're going to be looking like. And definitely not the ones in the back. Those were the old ones. And those ones that were mainly sold in Japan. And I'll never forget, always that little white curtain that they had in the back seat. I don't think it's going to work here, but that's what we're going to be bringing in, hopefully, in the years to come. So that will be the Lexus LFA concept. Still a concept, but once it's not a concept, we will most certainly be looking at bringing it into South Africa. It's a full battery electric vehicle, and I know one or two people that would love to buy one of these cars. Okay, I now want to talk about the new and upcoming offerings for 2006. We will be mainly focusing around there, and I'm going to invite to the stage a very funky-looking guy by the name of Donovan Goliath. It was the first time I've ever met him. Are you brothers with Jason?
Business partners. I'm
Business
basically Jason
partners.
on Ozempic. That's
Because you know he always gives me and Andrew a hard time when he has to introduce us.
Why?
I don't know.
No, but you know what? And I understand why. This is a very modest man right here, right? He should have started off with one of his biggest accolades. Just last week, Leon over here voted Randburg Son's sexiest man in the automotive industry. You give him a round of applause right now. Stop with this humility. Announce your accolades every day. I just want to say, just before we begin, I have no problem being an influencer for one of those supercars that you showed. I'm down. No problem at all. So please, thank you very much, now that we know each other. What I do want to talk about, which I'm very excited about, somebody had mentioned just behind me there, I've been told that 2026 is the year of the Hilux. So are we going to be revealing one of them here today? Do I need to start a countdown? Do we do a bit of a Mexican wave? Are there fireworks? What do we do to announce this Hilux?
Donovan, I'm very sorry to say this, but no.
No Hilux?
No Hilux today. I'm very sorry about it. I know that many people came probably to come and see the new Hilux.
Okay.
But just give us some couple of months and then we will come up with something big.
Okay.
And worthy of waiting.
Okay. Call me back. Call me back. Thank you very much, first of all, for giving me this tender. I know Jason often does it, but my debit orders are very, very happy that I get to do this here today. If we're not revealing a Hilux, what are we doing here today?
So we're going to start with the D segment. You know, I spoke earlier about, if you look at our performance in D segment, it hasn't been great. I mean, let's be honest. And D segment is, if I can put it easily, it's between Corolla Cross and Fortuner.
Okay, that was going to be my
next gap, and it's kind of where the RAV4 plays. But RAV4 has been, frankly speaking, our only dominant force, or trying to be the dominant force in D segment. But we know what's happened in South Africa. That's the most contested segment in our space. So we've come with models that we believe will most certainly help us grow our presence within the D segment. And that's what I'm going to be revealing to everybody today.
When did the RAV4 land in SA?
Years-wise?
Yes.
Oh, heck. No, you're asking me now. It's probably 10 years ago.
90s?
Probably 10 years.
Oh, man, the first one. It was much longer than that, right?
Probably, yeah.
1994?
It was the first three-door we brought in.
Wow.
Yeah. I actually drove one in Japan. I had one when I stayed in Japan. I had a three-door.
Incredible.
Absolutely loved it.
Okay.
Yeah, it came out with a 2-liter engine.
Lovely stuff. So what are we reviewing today then?
Let's have a look at our first reveal.
Oh, the sexy slow reveal. Oh! Wow! This is a RAV4.
This is
Let me
the
go
new
down.
RAV4. This is the all-new RAV4.
This is amazing.
What do you think? This is the GR version.
You know what it looks like? This looks like a RAV4 with Aeromat. That's what it looks like. This is a RAV4 with Aeromat. Like you've done a lot to it.
Yeah, so we'll bring it out in 3 versions. Obviously, there will be a GR, bespoke GR, but 3 drivetrains: ICE, hybrid technology, hybrid electric, and then plug-in hybrid.
It's amazing.
Well.
I mean, you guys obviously can't see a lot of the details here, but I mean, like fat spoiler at the back. Look at this, all of these details, piano black. Lovely.
Very nice.
Do not be surprised. I'm telling you, there's a colored guy out there that is going to put a BBS rim on this thing or something, or an Eagle rim. It's got those specs. This is lovely. Let's give it a round of applause. This is amazing. This is the sharp lines.
I think what's important is that it's all new tech. First for Toyota, which is the 24-inch multimedia, which is really something important for us, and we're moving in that direction. So that is the first for us on this RAV. And I mean, just look at the design. I mean, the design is so futuristic, and it's an amazing car. I mean, inside the tech in this vehicle it really is something special. And another interesting stat about RAV: it's the #1 car seller globally in our stable. The #1 car seller in the world. RAV4. So it's such an important model for us within that D segment that we want to compete in. And I really think it's going to do very well. We've got ambitious plans for it.
It definitely is going to do well. This is, honestly, probably the one time I can say you're going to pull up to the car meet in a RAV4 and people, that's a RAV4? You're going to be confident to pull up. It's really amazing. Well done.
Very nice. Absolutely. Can I take you to the next one?
Let's go. Let's move on to
let's
the
have a look
very
at the next
exciting
review.
stuff. I love this. This music is very sexy. Is this your playlist? That's all I want to know.
It's always a big discussion with the PR team.
Okay.
They've got TikTok music, which I don't really understand. But I don't know. Is that TikTok music? I don't know. I don't think so.
What are we looking at here? Is this FJ?
So no. You must pronounce it right.
Oh.
It's Land Cruiser FJ.
Not FJ Land Cruiser.
No.
Land Cruiser
This
FJ.
is Land Cruiser DNA. It's all-wheel. It's a proper 4-wheel drive ladder frame that you can go anywhere with. It's got the name Land Cruiser to it, and it's called the Land Cruiser FJ. Very funky. You can see the design, and as I said earlier, Land Cruiser. If you look at Prado sales being dominant in that SUV space, then Land Cruiser 300. We know that we have customers that aspire to drive the brand Land Cruiser, and we believe that this will fill that gap and hopefully continue dominating in the space of Land Cruiser. And we believe Land Cruiser FJ will do that for us.
It's so beefy.
It is.
But you know what's nice about this car? You're going to get into this car and people will go, yeah, this is a subtle way of showing that he's wealthy. It's got that thing about it.
Very nice.
Very, very nice car.
And the accessory packages that you'll be able to put onto this vehicle is going to make it even look better.
From every angle.
Yes.
From every angle.
Very, very nice.
So full of like you mentioned earlier. So full off-road capability. I can
full
take
off-road
this
capability. It will go where any other 4x4 goes, without a doubt. Very, very nice.
Wow.
And I like the color.
Beautiful color.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Are we jumping straight into the next one, or do you want to?
You can talk. What would you like to hear?
No. I'm just.
So do you, maybe, I mean, the question is, and I think the media would probably want to know that. I mean, is this enough for us to fight the D segment? Well, it's going to help, without a doubt, and we will do our best, but we've got something else as well that we're going to put into this segment with a completely different drivetrain. But RAV is an iconic model. As I said earlier, it's the #1 seller. Land Cruiser, the name, just Land Cruiser name is so embedded. I said to you yesterday, it's the master of Africa.
Yes, of course.
And it's really going to help us really build our D segment that we are so serious about wanting to tackle.
Who are you thinking of putting into this car here? So, I mean, you got your big boy Land Cruiser guys. Who gets into this car?
So, it's you'll have your Hilux customers that always aspire to drive a Land Cruiser. We know they are there.
Sure.
Now, your top-of-the-range Hilux is more expensive. It will be more expensive than this. But the point is, there are Hilux customers within the South African context that drive the cheaper version of a Hilux. We believe will aspire for this. And I'm hoping that we will attract from some of our competitors into this Land Cruiser FJ, because it will be more affordable. And I mean, you're driving a Land Cruiser, which I suppose is good.
Is this going to be, what do you call it? So previous gen FJ owners, is this the one you're wanting them to jump into?
I think they will. I don't know if all of them will, but that vehicle is so iconic in its own way. But I do believe we have a strong feel and sense that current FJ customers will move into the new Land Cruiser FJ.
Forgive me if this is a profanity, but what I love about this car, it's badass. Like if you get this in it, you get it in an all black. Can you get a black on black murdered out version?
We probably will.
The murdered out. That's for the car magazine.
But it all depends on what the market would want, and that's something that we can adjust as we go along. But usually we set our paint colors, but it will be very, very modern kind of paint colors that we'll select for Land Cruiser FJ, and I think it will appeal. I think a lot of young mothers will buy into this vehicle because of the space. With sports kits, etc., etc. I think we're going to see a lot of young mothers driving this vehicle, without a doubt, because of the offering it can give you. You can drive it in the city, you can take it on the open road.
Nice. Pick up the kids from soccer, then head to Magali's, no problem.
Absolutely,
Done.
absolutely.
Lovely stuff. Cool. What else?
Can we move on?
Let's go.
Okay, so let's go and have a look at, we're going to now talk new energy vehicles, obviously, but before I do that, I remember myself and Andrew spoke about this about 3 to 4 years ago, where we said part of multipath is also, we got to diversify our business. Yes, we are a car company, but we've got to diversify. And it's something that we've been having a lot of discussions with our dealer network as well, to say you've got to diversify your business. Now, that doesn't mean you've got to go and buy a Chinese dealer, but what we are saying is maybe you need to diversify your business in other areas of extra revenue income. And this is what we've been looking at as a company quite aggressively. We've been having business units around circular economy, carbon neutral fuels, different options for carbon, and which also applies, which could be obviously helped on Hino trucks. And then, of course, our EV ecosystem that we're busy developing, which is really around chargers, BEV readiness. All of these things are part of that whole ecosystem, and we will obviously expand on it. And then on fuels, there's a lot of exciting stuff happening on fuels. Andrew spoke about hydrogen ice, for example. We have what we call now flex fuel, where you can have a Hino truck, and not now ready, but it's something we're working towards. You'd have a Hino truck that could run on hydrogen as well, combined with diesel. Which again brings down the cost of ownership for customers that into the truck business. These are the flexible options that we're looking at as a company, but not just for Toyota, we're looking at as a total package for all our brands going forward. And then, of course, we're looking at circular economy, things like a localized battery recycling facilities. What are we going to do with all these batteries in all the hybrid technology, plug-in hybrid, battery electric? So this is another area of business that we are looking at, and circulate that within the market, and obviously make some revenue out of it. We have to do this because the impact of new energy vehicles into our business is quite substantial. You know, what we've seen happen in Europe, if you look at pure battery electric vehicle, your revenue drops by 60 to 50% quite easily because they don't need the maintenance that a normal ICE engine needs. So our multi-path strategy is what we are following, and there's 6 pillars to it, and we believe that hybrid, plug-in hybrid, and to a smaller degree battery electric will play a role within the South African context, but also ICE.
Quick question, and maybe it's just me, but there might be somebody here thinking about it as well. What is the difference between hybrid and plug-in hybrid?
Well, hybrid, so plug-in hybrid is, the difference between the two is that plug-in hybrid's got a BEV option.
Okay.
Hybrid is normal hybrid. It's a battery, electric motor, and engine.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Plug-in hybrid has got that. Plus, you can drive on its own on battery electric, without using your hybrid system. Okay. That's the beauty of it. The other thing about plug-in hybrid, which is we believe is the best technology, not just for South Africa but probably globally, is that it's regenerated its own power to charge the battery via a brake input, downhill, and also it's got an option where you can press a button where it actually self-charges the battery through the engine. So the story of that you have to rush to a charging station is actually not necessary on a plug-in hybrid. You would drive from here to Cape Town in a plug-in hybrid, for example. You'll do 100 Ks on the battery, and it will automatically switch over to hybrid technology, and you can carry on to drive to Cape Town. That's fundamental change. It's very expensive technology, but we believe with the growth in plug-in hybrid, it's all about scale. You know, you need scale.
Yeah, I mean, that's the like, kind of deterring factor. Correct. I think Leanne had spoken about it earlier on, you know, that people are going, not too sure.
But actually, it's not the case, you know. If the technology is there and the technology will work, we know it will work. And we just need to have a clear, I mean, we have to adapt to what customers want, but we also want to give customers options. Yeah. This is the Toyota philosophy. We want to give customers options as to what drivetrain they actually would want. Can we move on?
Yes, please.
I've got another reveal that I would like to show you. Let's have a look at this reveal.
That's an EV.
That is a full battery electric BZ4X.
You see, let me tell you the first thing I like about this, and I think Gulam had mentioned it earlier. I love that you've kind of broken the, what do you call it? Let me take one step back. It always bothered me that EVs looked like dishwashers. Like there was no character to them. You just felt like, I don't want to drive an EV because it just looks like an EV. We don't need to make EV cars look like EV cars. This looks like something I want to pull out today.
It's got. I think an easy way of explaining it. It's got some soul in it.
So that's exactly it.
Because if you sit in it and you
let's get in.
And you look at it inside. This is everything Toyota because it's.
Oh yes.
It feels like a normal car.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's a battery electric. It's got all the tech in that you want. Ranges up to about 400, 450, depending on how you drive. I suppose you can get to 500. But I've personally driven this vehicle last year in Japan. And what impressed me the most about it is, of course, the smoothness of it. We all know battery electric vehicles are smooth.
Yep.
But the game changer for us on BZ4 is the X mode. And I'm sure the media
wants
the
X mode.
It's called the X mode. It gives you a off-road ability, which is probably the first for battery electric. And when driving the vehicle in those conditions, we drove it on a Land Cruiser test track. Okay, we didn't go over big rocks and stuff, but the point is, it was muddy, it was rocky. This vehicle inclines, downclines. It drove exactly where I could drive with a Land Cruiser 300. What impressed me the most, Andrew was moved much quicker to becoming a BEV fan than me. Me and him always talk about it. But I have made the switch because if BEV can give you that, and we can long-term have a solution around the battery anxiety, I think this is the way to go if customers prefer to buy a battery electric because it gives you everything. The off-road ability of this vehicle is what absolutely impressed me. And It's got a downhill ascent. It really is incredible. And I completely changed my mind. What I like about it, as you said, if you drive in any other BEV, it feels like a BEV.
Yes.
Because they're very similar in design. We've kept the Toyota design internally.
Love it.
And it's a BEV, but it's got so much other features. Big wheels, it's higher. And you'll be seeing our marketing campaign that we're going to be running on this. It's really going to be focused around what this vehicle is capable of.
Somebody made you
I'm very
guys
excited.
angry, and you are fighting
Yes.
at the moment, because this
So,
is incredible.
This will be another model that we're going to be fighting, the D segment.
Oh, really?
Also the D segment. That will fit 100% into D segment. And we're giving our network, our dealer network, options now where we can actually really compete within this highly competitive segment in South Africa.
That's incredible, man. I love it.
Very nice.
Let's give that a round of applause. That's amazing. Imagine you can bash around in the Kruger and save the world at the same time. Fantastic.
So those guys that tell you that, the Golf GTIs and the RSIs and are quicker, look at that 0 to 100, 5.1 seconds. It's pretty impressive. When we drove this car in Japan, we were on one of our test tracks, and I was blown away by the performance of this car. Really, I was. And I'm a V8 lover,
Yeah.
but that car kind of blew me away. It really did.
EV8, if you will.
Yeah, it really was impressive.
Excellent stuff.
Can we move forward?
Please go.
Okay, so
It's exciting.
Obviously, this is not a reveal, but it's something just to talk about within the RAV4 space. We'll also be launching, we've already spoken about it, around plug-in hybrid and hybrid technology. So we will continue with that. And again, it'll help us create more options for customers going into the future. Plug-in hybrid, as I said, we don't expect massive volume, but we will definitely bring it into the market, and we will fight as hard as what we can on this.
I give you an idea, and if you go ahead with it and it makes money, there are a lot of people here, and we are filming this. This EV RAV4, if you do not change it to REV4, R-E-V-4, you are wasting everybody's time here. Honestly, that's the new logo. Let's go.
Okay, so let's look at the next reveal. Also, it's not a physical reveal, but it's going to be on display outside. It's our, So this is now the all-new Corolla Cross GR version that we'll be launching this year, and very excited about it. Some nice subtle changes to it. We've made some nice changes inside. Actually, I drove one 2 days ago. I was very impressed with it. Even on the power side of it, I'm not talking massive power, but the car just feels differently dynamically, and it's, of course, as you know, it's locally built.
Beautiful stuff.
Okay.
We love it. Let's go.
Let's go. So, Donovan, now we're launching Land Cruiser 300, first time with hybrid technology. It's one motor hybrid. It's performance version of hybrid.
Okay.
It really is. It's already been launched in Alex Lexus, so it's something that is quite bespoke for this. Customers that drive these vehicles, firstly, we know they can afford them, but the point is that a lot of our Land Cruiser customers have been demanding from us, saying, give us other options. Give us other drivetrain options, and hybrid technology is the way to go, and we're very, very excited about this. We're launching it in the ZX model, petrol only, and the GRS version as well of the Land Cruiser 300. Very excited.
This is a big car.
It's big.
The tech to make this thing perform the way
Absolutely.
current customers are expecting it to perform must be insane.
It'll be better than current
Wow.
because of the one-motor hybrid technology. So it really is impressive.
I mean, if you need me to test it,
No problem. I got it. I got it.
Andrew's here, we can,
Let's look at the next reveal.
let's go. I love it, eh? I love it. You got one parked outside as well, eh?
Actually, the sequence was wrong. But can we please reveal the Lexus? Can I go?
There we go.
Okay, Donovan, that's the all-new RZ Lexus full battery electric F Sport.
Yeah, ne?
Also, it's equipped with X mode, same as that you saw on, that I explained to you on the BZ. And look at that steering wheel.
This is a Formula One style steering wheel. This is amazing.
Yeah, isn't it?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, this is my size, eh?
Is it?
This is absolutely my
Is
size.
this the one that you want to be the influencer in?
I could be anyone. At this point, I think I could be the influencer for all 4 of these cars. That's the way it's going right now. This is very, very special.
Nice.
I mean, haven't started it yet, haven't jumped. I mean, we haven't even moved in this car, but it feels like something that I want to get on, take on.
Again, you know, if you look at, because of the X mode in it, you can see, you know, the height, the wheel size. It really is, it's really something that gives customers options when they drive a battery electric vehicle.
Of course.
And I think that's what's important. It shouldn't just be a battery electric. People should talk about different things when they drive a battery electric. I suppose that is the message.
Man, once again, you know, props to the styling. Like, this thing is just beautiful. Like, every angle.
It is. It is. Very aggressive styling at the back as well.
Ah, lovely stuff. Let's go. Do we have a different version of this? Like, because, I mean, you mentioned earlier that we have something a bit more aggressive in this style.
It will come, but I mean, just look at the kilowatt. I mean, the F Sport 300 kilowatt. It's serious power for a battery electric. But the next one is something I really want to share with you.
Okay, let's go.
We don't have a vehicle here, but it's this. It's called the RZ600E battery electric. Now, did you ever imagine that a battery electric would look this sexy?
No, this isn't. This is the one.
Would you convert a V8 guy into buying this?
Oh, absolutely, in a heartbeat. We can do it right now.
You think so? But look at this car. I mean, if you look at the design, 315 kilowatt. I mean, carbon fiber roof, 20-inch wheels.
Are we getting it in SA?
It's very aggressive.
Will it be coming to SA anytime soon?
Yes, it will. It will come this year.
Shoo. Let's give that a round of applause, because that is...
It really is nice. Beautiful design. You know, I mean,
shocked.
I think the shift that you see is when you talk about battery electric, and what Toyota and Lexus has done is create the excitement around walkie-talkie that I spoke about earlier on.
Yes.
Being excited about driving something different, but it still gives you a car-like feel. That is really what we want. People love cars.
Yes.
We love cars.
Yes.
So we want to make sure that that goes into what we sell to our customers.
And that's the thing. I mean, you could easily manipulate people into, I mean, the styling could, you know, you could make this thing look cool, but if it doesn't perform the way it looks, because you're expecting grunt coming out of that thing.
It's very nice. Okay, let's go to GR. So, GR Racing, you know, we built together with our partner who's the owner of this business under the brand name called GR Racing. We've now built a fully established manufacturing facility in Midrand. It's about 90% complete. They're already manufacturing, building. The whole idea around this was motorsport is an expensive thing. And for us to make this sustainable into the future and to build a business model was important. So it's one thing saying, oh, but Toyota, you must just give the money. It's not how it works. You've got to build a business that can kind of look after itself. And this was the idea behind building this factory, where we can produce our own vehicles, which we've always done for many, many years, but this is high tech. We can produce 90% of components that we manufacture. We are manufacturing it by ourselves within this facility. So it's quite impressive.
It does look like a showroom, though. Not a show. It looks like a museum almost. It's got.
Please, Donovan, when you ever have, I would love to take you there. I mean, you must see this place. That's what it looks like. And then they've got their machining rooms, they've got their lathes, they've got everything in this facility. And they literally build that Dakar vehicle from scratch right up.
Wow.
What we're also doing is our GTC vehicles, later on, all our GR Cup vehicles will also be, we want to bring things in-house, and we need to maintain our costs. And by doing that is you build your own factory, and you contain your costs, and you contain what you build and produce. And also you know what you're producing, because then it becomes your own IP. So that was really the thinking behind it, and we're going to evolve. Now, going back to the GR GT that we'll be launching next year, the idea is that these customers that buy a 7 to 8 million rands car definitely wants a different experience. You can't have a normal a salesman at a dealer selling and delivering this car. This car is such high tech.
Yes.
You need engineers to actually explain to the customer how this car actually works. So of course the network will be involved. They will be creating some of the leads, but the handover will be done at this facility, because what I haven't told you yet, part of this facility is a showroom. A proper GR showroom that we're going to be building, where this vehicle will actually be delivered to the customer. The handover, together with the dealer, will be done at this facility. The maintenance and servicing will be done by this facility because of the high-tech nature of the GR GT. So it's first time we're doing this. You know, it's new, and I mean, the dealer model is not built for this.
It's like a nice customized personal experience. Like when your car leaves that floor, you feel like you've been a part of it almost.
Absolutely, and I mean, a lot of these guys, when they buy these cars, they already know what they're buying.
Of course.
Because many of them own Ferraris and Porsches.
Yes.
So this car, he already done his research. He knows what this car is about. He wants to talk to an engineer that actually shows him the car. Yep. How do you start this car as a process on its own?
Yeah.
And never mind driving it. So, you know, that's the kind of experience we want to give the customer in the future. So I'm very excited about it.
Very nice.
Okay, so let's have a look at the next reveal, which is now the real one. So under the GR banner, we'll be launching, it's more of a facelift than anything else, some spec changes. We can launch it with the 8-speed automatic edition.
Yep.
Those little scoops that you see on the bonnet. And some nice, small exterior design changes. So,
giving it hips, that's what's nice about it.
I know, I think so. Eh? It looks aggressive. I like it as well. But linked to this, it's the first time that we're doing this. We're also going to be launching GR parts. So we have a lot of customers that buy this product that wants a different suspension setup, or he wants something different on his car. We're now going to be able to supply them as well with parts, which is really what we want to do.
Is this only for GR owners?
GR owners.
Okay, so I can't go in there with a standard Corolla and go.
Look, I suppose you can take a Corolla, the normal Corolla hatch, and try and beef it up if you want to. But I mean, I wouldn't suggest you do that, because a lot of the stuff that's engineered into this vehicle is engineered for this. Because you'll have a stiffer shock absorber, a rebound different. So your design is going to be different. So I wouldn't say that.
There are at least 5 people here who go, a Cressida GR could be something. Like that would, in Limpopo and Eastern Cape, Cressida GR, let's go. It'll happen.
Okay, so the next one is around our GR Cup that has been so successful.
Yep.
And let's quickly show you this video, and then I'll talk about it.
7 journalists, 7 races, unlimited ambition. Our 2026 Media Challenge drivers are from Supersport, Nabil Abdul. From Auto Trader, Kayedza Mbiri. News 24 Motorings, Craig Nicholson. For The Witness and Algoa FM, Naresh Maharaj. Representing ENCA, Justin Ford. From Kumbi M on Cars, Kumbi Mchakazi. And for Kuligani on Wheels, Brandon Jacobs.
Are they here today?
They are.
Are they here? Stand
Where
up.
are they?
Stand up. Where are they? Please stand up. There they are. Give them a massive round of applause. What a time.
Yeah, and I suppose congratulations. Nabil, you got competition this year, eh? No, congratulations. And, the media has played such an important role for us in this GR Cup.
Yes.
I'm so incredibly grateful for what they've done for us in the exposure that they've given us. And it's all around the GR brand. And I really want to thank the previous drivers that's been doing it for us. There's just two requests, please, from my side. Don't get Glenn's blood pressure going on a Saturday, please. Because I have to then phone him and also calm him down. So please don't prank the cars. The second thing is the cars that you drive are not included in my parts targets on panel. So please don't think you're helping me. So keep it on the road, but most importantly, be safe and have fun and enjoy it. And it's really an honor for us to have you part of us in that. Thank you.
Well done. Beautiful.
I also have to say, we also have dealers that aspire to become racing drivers. So they also have cars that they race with the journos.
Okay.
And it's quite interesting to see them drive.
Wait, I felt it sounded like a bit of sarcasm.
Some of them are really good drivers, I must be honest. But what I like about the group of dealers that's actually participating in this, they're passionate about cars, they're passionate about the GR brand, and it just helps us build what we've always been saying about building this GR brand. Not just, it's a global push, but as South Africa, we really intend to build it even stronger. And it's because of these activations that help us do that. So both of them, thank you very much.
Amazing.
Okay. The last one I want to talk about is we're also going to now be going into what we call the GR Cup Rally Challenge. And also, one of our journalists will be driving this car. It's actually parked outside. I said to Mark Jones, where's he, Mark? Please give him a hand. He's the bravest man here. Mark, I don't know if you're brave or why you're doing this, but please keep it on the road. No, but I'm also again grateful, that Mark is prepared to do this. We're not the rally scene has dropped a lot, and Glenn and his team are trying to really build it up more. And I think with having people like Mark, who's an absolute petrolhead, participating in it, and again just enjoying it, is really the exposure that we want.
Fantastic. Shout out to you, Mark. Well done, man. Yeah.
Donovan, it was an absolute honor having you with me. I really enjoyed it.
Appreciate you.
Thank you for being who you are, and we can maybe talk one day.
Sounded very heartfelt.
Yeah, it is. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Give this man a massive round of applause. Thank you very much, sir.
Andrew, I'm going to call you up to the stage, and then Leanne, I think.
Yeah. So I know I'm meant to be facilitating this Q&A, but if you can find me, then good luck to you. Because Leon, you remember you said that you've got a mommy car. I've jumped into the mommy car and I'm going to drive off.
Oh, there we are.
It's stunning. It's stunning. I've been having some fun looking at these cars. They're unbelievable, guys. I can't wait till you get a chance. Yeah. I tried to figure out how I was going to drive away, but I couldn't. So here I am. That was stunning. Gosh, did you guys enjoy that? What did you think? Awesome. I think so. I think so. Okay, a quick Q&A. So let's take a couple of questions just to sort of see. Okay, there we go. Always our first hand up there. What's your name, by the way?
Brendan from Marilla Media.
Brendan, awesome.
Leon,
go for it.
I'll give this one to you. Reports are that FJ is going to have a 2.7 petrol motor. That motor is also about 25 years old. Is Toyota South Africa able to use their size and sway to get a diesel model for local consumption?
Oh, thanks, Brendan, for that question. Yes, we are launching it.
We respond to the market changes, but also balance our manufacturing ambitions to contribute to the continent. And I think, as was discussed earlier, this is the fine balance that we need to have. On the other hand, I did say at the beginning of the session that we'll reveal some of the elements around our ambitions to become a lot more resilient, but also to compete in a far more active way. But we'll have to wait and see for those announcements to come later in the year.
Unbelievable.
Thank you.
Guys, it has been an absolute pleasure. Andrew, Leon, thank you. And we can only but sort of feel that we're in good hands to navigate through these really difficult but wonderful times. Let's not kid. We're moving into a new era, and you guys are at the helm of it, and we thank you so much for the work that you've done and to keep on bringing out these amazing things and representing the brand so beautifully in South Africa. Well done. Well done. Let's give them both a round of applause, please. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Well done.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that pretty much so brings us to the end of the formal proceedings for SOMI 2026. But as you've heard, this is I'm almost feeling like there's going to be a second SOMI this year, because it looks like we've only spoken about half of the year, and there's another exciting half still to come. So I don't know what it is, but I got a feeling it's going to be really, really exciting. This 2026 is a year where anything can happen, but it just feels different. It feels like something exciting is going to happen, and I'm happy to be a part of it. I really am. So this is pretty much so, as I said, the end of this formal part. Lunch is served upstairs. Please enjoy your time here. Don't rush off. Have a look at these vehicles. These are just the ones here. There are some more outside as well. And you're going to get a gift bag on your way out. And I've been told that there's a new magazine that's going to be in there that's available in a digital copy as well. And that's part of the Lexus brand. But what a magnificent morning it's been. It certainly has been some food for my brain, and I hope it's been the same for you. Have a fantastic year, and we really look forward to meeting again very, very soon. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here, and take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.